All right, we should be live. How y'all doing, Pastor E? You want to set us off? I'll do some checks while you're setting us off just to make sure everything sounds and looks good, but we should be live.
Brother, thank you for doing this. This was crazy. So we had to get the guy that does this every day of his life to kind of help us to get this thing started. Let's pray, y'all. Let's pray real quick. Let's dig in. Father, I thank you for my family, my brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ. We get to fellowship here and fellowship in eternity. And we're a community of people who have been called by you to deliver up and make clear the faith that was once delivered up for us. And so, God, in Jesus' mighty name, break shackles and bonds and bring people to Jesus. That's really what we want to do, is see people meet Jesus and have the gospel clarified. Be with us in this time. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. So thanks, everybody, for getting on. We have been, if you hear something, I'm trying to keep the endorsements from coming. You ain't getting no endorsements, so I'm taking the thing off my water. But we're doing this live, and we're in here with everybody and a group of people that I really respect. Each one of these people very, very deeply. Their commitment to the gospel, their commitment to Jesus, and their ongoing commitment to making sure that the gospel is clear, particularly in the urban context. That's amazing for me, particularly as a pastor. It's a blessing for me to see people do that. So tonight we're talking about Hebrew Israelites. And the reason why we're talking about it is we want to begin to clarify some things because we feel like the body needs clarity on it. And we feel like Hebrew Israelites need clarity because there's a lot of stuff that kind of runs around. And I know we get into verbal tassels online and tussling online. But what we want to do is we're going to be respectful, but we are going to be doctrinally clear on what we believe is misunderstandings, but then abhorrent, and what's anti-gospel, and clarifying what the gospel is. So the way tonight's going to go is kind of like this really quickly. I want everybody to kind of introduce themselves on the platform very, very quickly. Once they introduce themselves, we will go into why is Hebrew Israelite dialogue even necessary, and why are we engaging Hebrew Israelites? Why do we believe there are issues with it that need to be engaged with the gospel? Then from there, we want to talk about the differences between camps and moderates from our perspective, and how even within those, they're not monolithic, and some key people in those groups. And in talking about those key people in those groups, we want to begin to talk about the different beliefs and then challenge those things. And then from there, we're going to talk about some things that came down the pike with our sister Nefer that, us as brothers just not going to put up with, because you can disagree with someone, but you're not going to be disrespectful to the woman of God in Jesus' mighty name. Not that she needs us to do any of that, because she can defend herself and that type of thing. She has a husband, she has a God, and she has her own character and identity in Christ that affords her the ability to do that. We just felt some type of way about it, and so we wanted to come on and do that. All right. So everybody, introduce yourself, who you are, and maybe even say why you're into urban apologetics, real quick.
If I could go last, because I'm setting up this stuff. If I could go last, because I still need to set up some tech stuff. If that's okay.
Okay, so I'm Neffy, also known as Nefer Nitty. I am an apologist by nature. I feel like my personality is such that I express that which I'm passionate about. And ever since I became a Christian, I've been expressing that. My upbringing has gone through indigenous African religions, such as Yoruba. I was also raised Catholic. I also went through the conscious movement, and I am sold out for Jesus, as they say. I'm also a full-time wife and mom, and an attorney and an educator.
Amen. Thanks, sis.
I guess I'll hop in right quick. So what up, y'all? It's your hometown hero, the real Adam Coleman. Y'all know what it is, man. Just happy to be here. With again, I just kind of want to echo what Pastor Mason said. Just a group of folks that I truly respect, who's out here putting in great work. So a couple years ago, I started the True ID podcast, and now it's kind of expanded to the website and the YouTube channel as well. But basically, I got into apologetics just wrestling with the kinds of questions that all of us on this panel get all the time. People were, whether it be on Facebook, Twitter, or what have you, confronting me on, was Jesus a copycat of Horus, and all the kind of stuff that we get is Christianity, white man's religion. And I realized that I wasn't able to, clearly articulate, what the Bible has to say about it, and just really give good responses to those kinds of things. And so as I was grappling with myself, I started finding more and more information to be able to combat those kind of deceptions. And I wasn't coming across a lot of resources, that were really addressing it. So I was like, hey, why don't I give it a shot? So I launched the podcast and the channel and stuff, and I've been going at it, man. So the reason why I do this is because really it started with me kind of wrestling with these questions, and actually also people in my family as well. I got comedics in my family, I got atheists in my family, and the cookouts, and online sometimes we have these exchanges and stuff like that every now and again. So just addressing these things and realizing it's a far bigger issue than I thought it was initially, which is why I think this conversation right here is so important, to really lay it down in terms of what biblical truth is, and let Christians know that there's nothing to be afraid of. You don't have to worry about the conscious boogeyman out there. There are reasonable responses to support the Christian worldview. So that's what I'm about, man.
I'll jump in. What's up, everybody? I am the BK Apologist. As a disciple of Christ, I believe in the Great Commission, making disciples of all nations. But as you do ministry and you help people to find Christ, you start realizing there are certain teachings and doctrines that kind of impede people's view of the gospel. And I also started noticing that there were specific teachings that were directed towards Black and brown people. And to be quite honest, our white brothers and sisters were not aware of these type of teachings. Not that they wasn't compassionate or loving, it just wasn't on their radar. So it was something that I took upon myself, and of course with these people here, that we had to create an apologia to deal with these particular teachings that were targeting specifically Black and brown people. So that's why I'm here.
Thanks, bro.
All right. Oh, you good, Mike?
All right. So my name is Faithful to God. I have a YouTube channel called Faithful to God. My ministry is directed primarily to debunking the lies promoted by the One West camps, but not only the One West camps. I was affected by this personally because before I became saved, I was first in the Hebrew Roots movement. After I came out of the Hebrew Roots movement, I was starting to be beguiled by the camp doctrine itself. So this is something that affects me personally. Not only that, but also being Latino, it affects people in my community. And so, by the grace of God, when he brought me to saving faith, it really was something that the Lord put a conviction on me to do ministry towards this false doctrine. There weren't a lot of people who were doing it, at least when I first started doing it. And then by the glory of God, more people were, getting involved, like Vocab Malone and other people. And so, yeah, that's pretty much, why I'm doing what I'm doing and my interest in it.
All right.
Hey,
Brother George.
Brother George.
Yeah. How's it going, everyone? My name's George. If you're wondering how I pronounce my surname, it's Ruopene. It means 2 cents in our native language, the Maori language. I'm new to apologetics. I've been dealing with apologetics pretty much since I was a former member and leader of the Hebrew Israelite camp, GOCC, Gathering of Christ Church. I came out of that just over a year ago. Why I feel like Christian apologetics is important is because of the lack of what you would call Christian history and the reason why Christians believe what they believe. The lack of knowledge in regarding to that, that's why people are falling into these different cults. I being one of them. So I believe, I think it's a calling of mine. I was quite a successful camp leader. I was the leader of many different congregations here in the South Pacific, and now they're targeting Polynesians and Aborigines and other Africans that live in these parts of the world with these false teachings. So yeah, I'm just happy to be here amongst you guys who have been in the field for a time and just here to share my story and really learn more. So thanks for having me on.
And my name is Vocab, and the Hebrew Israelites came on my radar about around 10 years ago, but then about 3 or 4 years ago, started really tackling the issues involved and tried to be hopefully a bridge builder of sorts, making people who are not aware of these issues aware of these issues and giving them a good introduction and breaking down those things. And even a bridge builder, if a Hebrew Israelite will have a discussion to have good talks. And so sometimes, I might be on the street and it might seem very contentious, but then other times we'll be sitting down, have a nice conversation. And I'm game for either one, because I think these discussions need to be had and there needs to be a greater understanding to this. And it's part of a whole broader issue, a whole set of broader issues dealing with all kinds of urban apologetic issues, which different people on the panel specialize in different ones in different areas. This is just one among many we could be talking about, because the issues are many and the resources are burgeoning, but not quite as thick as they need to be. But I see 2020 as a year of change, and symposiums like this are the beginning. So I'm glad to be here.
Again, thank everybody for being on. My name is Eric Mason. I'm lead pastor and founder of Epiphany Fellowship, also the president and founder of Thriving, a urban resource collaborative that trains people for gospel mission globally. We planted churches from Malawi, Africa to South Central LA. We kind of oversee, if you want to say it, that 44 churches in inner cities across the globe. Written 4 books: Man Who Restored, Be God to the Punch, Unleashed, and recently Woke Church. And then some people in this video, they coming out with the next one. We'll talk about that later on, that resource. But I got into I've been involved in some type of urban apologetics. I didn't call it that. I didn't call it that back in the day, but I've been involved in urban apologetics probably for 28 years. And so it's kind of been on and off. So tonight, I'm excited to be able to bring people on. Name your platforms too, real quick. Whatever platform you got. I don't think everybody named their platform. Can you name your platform you're on?
Oh yeah, youtube.com/Vocab Malone. And subscribe, because the next 2 days we're doing Cyber City, and a lot of the sessions, it's an all virtual urban apologetics conference. A lot of the sessions are on the channel, so you definitely want to check those out.
Follow that, y'all. Follow that. Go ahead, BK.
Yeah, you catch me on YouTube /BK Apologist. Find me there.
Adam got his in his description, but you can put it on there. Go ahead.
Yeah, True Idea Apologetics. Definitely check me out at the YouTube channel, True Idea Apologetics, and also TrueIdeaPodcast.com and TrueIdeaApologetics.com.
Yeah. Now, Nefer, go ahead and tell them how many organizations you started recently.
So I have nefernitty.com, which aims to be a resource for the types of questions we're addressing here tonight. I'm on YouTube. I just updated my name so you guys can see it, youtube.com/nefernitty. On Facebook by the same name, except it has ESQ for Esquire at the end. I'm sharing this on my Facebook page, so go ahead and add me, guys, because I love to interact with people. So yeah.
Brother George, you got anything cooking, brother?
Yeah, we have a channel, Faith and Grace Ministries. We're pretty much a group that, when I left the gathering of GOCC, Hebrew Israelite group, a lot of us moved on from them. So we're like a little assembly, and we also have a channel with content on there exposing, mainly dealing with the Hebrew Israelite movement, but also, the challenges that a lot of us face when coming out of a cult, because it's not easy. It's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
But we just want to let people know that you can't keep your faith, and you're not alone. There's a lot of us out here that have gone through that. So that's pretty much what our channel is about.
That's what's up, brother.
Thanks.
Faithful.
Thanks.
Faithful. You on, Faithful?
Yeah, my apology, Pastor. Everyone can check me out at Faithful to God. Again, that is Faithful to God on YouTube.
That's what's up. That's what's up. So why don't we go around kind of why is this a thing, right? Why are we as believers, particularly urban apologists, but we're just disciples who are fleshing out our gospel proclamation in the area of urban apologetics as one of those mechanisms for engaging people based on Jude 3, you know what I'm saying? Based on 1 Peter 3:15, based on Matthew 20:18 through 20, based on Mark 16, based on Acts 1:8, all of those different passages that are biblical motivators for gospel proclamation. Talk to the people why, and Nefer, if I could start with you, can you just talk about why is it a thing for us to engage Hebrew Israelites?
Okay, I think it's a microcosm of apologetics as a whole, and then urban apologetics as a subcategory. This is just one of those things where it is a topic that needs to be discussed because it's very current, and a lot of people have a lot of questions and are confused. Traditionally, I think in my own experience in the church hasn't always been very head on with addressing these types of issues.
Yeah.
And so it has been easy for people to get confused, or if they don't know how to study scriptures for themselves, they aren't prepared to provide an answer or a rebuttal for the way scripture is being interpreted to them by these different organizations. And so for me, I always tell people, for me, urban apologetics is life and death, and this conversation is no different, because I see it as a spiritual matter, and the way you see the gospel and the way you treat grace is a matter of spiritual life and death. And so because it's a hot topic, we need to have this conversation.
Amen. Faithful. Hit us with why you kind of said it, but we'll just reiterate it again. Why this is an issue. Why is it a thing? Why is it a thing? Okay.
Hey, yo, Mike.
Yeah. Oh, it's all good. Why don't you go ahead, Vocab?
A lot of times the issues that are not as mainstream, so atheism, Mormonism, secularism, all that kind of stuff, sometimes they get overlooked. And in my opinion, in a lot of ways, groups like the Nation of Islam got a pretty easy ride for almost a century. I'm not saying nobody didn't. I'm not saying nobody went after them or nobody dealt with them. I'm just saying it should have been a much bumpier ride. They should not have been able to get away with all the kinds of stuff they were saying. When I say get away with, I don't mean we're suing people or threatening them on corners. I mean that truth is checked. The errors are checked with truth. And so I think we're in a new era where the Hebrew Israelites are not going to have such an easy time. They're not going to be able to slide through. The Kemet's, they're not going to do so hot. I mean, I like Jabari on a personal level. I think you kind of saw the result of what I would be talking about with Jabari and Bantu. And this is important because these ideas are affecting people. They affect their lives. They affect the way they live. The amount of emails we get with my husband, my wife, my son, my parents are getting into this, and their personality is different, and they act this way and this way, and it's a real thing. And the numbers, if they're accurate at all, are quite astounding. It is possible, according to the best statistical data we have, according to Lifeway Research, that over 1 million, about 1.4 to 1.8 million people identify as Hebrew Israelites. And it's not just the identification of, I think I'm a Hebrew Israelite, it's the Hebrew Israelism. It's this ideology that there's different levels, but it's basically decidedly unbiblical because it takes all the priorities, flips them, emphasizes those minor things, sometimes which aren't even right in the first place, and ignores all the important things. You ignore the weightier and get caught up in the lighter, and sometimes the lighter is not even really. Mean, at least some of the stuff the Pharisees are saying was in the Bible. Some of this stuff you hear with these guys is like, yo, that's literally the opposite of what Scripture says. So it's a real issue because it affects people's lives and ultimately leads them down a path of destruction. So it matters.
Yeah. Alfredo.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I feel like they well, first of all, we have to really explain to people what urban apologetics is, just because there seems to be a misconception that a lot of people think it's some kind of new Christian denomination, you know, or it's they don't understand that it's a niche ministry, right? It's no different than a campus ministry, a singles ministry, or a chemical recovery ministry, right? It specializes in a particular demographic of people to help them find Christ, and it's just odd when people say, well, why do you focus on these particular teachings? But you would never ask a chemical recovery ministry, why do you focus on addiction? You know what I mean? It's like, that's what we're doing. We're focusing on a particular demographic. We believe that there are teachings that are contrary to the gospel that affect Black and brown people. And we want to help clarify the debris so that people can clearly see the gospel, because apologetics is just a aspect of the totality of the Christian walk.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's what it is for me.
Absolutely. 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 Adam.
Yeah, so I mean, a couple of things I would say is, first of all, let me just say this. I think a lot of times Hebrew Israelites feel like we're persecuting them, or like this is some sort of special move of this group of Christians to come out against them. But really, to be honest, if you think about church history, we're not really doing anything different than what you see throughout church history. Matter of fact, right behind you there, Pastor Mason, you got that series. I see you got like the Anti-Nicene Fathers. You got like that catalog right there. You know what I'm saying?
The whole thing. I got some stuff in the way.
Yeah, I see you flexing the library. I see you flexing the library. You know what I mean? But a lot of that stuff, particularly like I'm thinking about the Nicene and post-Nicene. Well, really, actually, all throughout it, you're really dealing with Christians responding to heresies and deceptions in their time periods. They're going back and forth with the ideas of their time, addressing misconceptions and unbiblical notions, and clarifying what the gospel is, clarifying what Orthodox Christianity is. And so when I think about, what we're doing, we're just doing the same thing. We're just in our generation addressing the concerns and deceptions of our generation. That's what this is about, And so the thing of it is, even I'm thinking about the Council of Nicaea, particularly, you got Arius who's teaching, heresies in Alexandria. They give him the boot, and then he goes somewhere else, starts teaching the same thing. Why? Because people in that other area may not have heard the deceptions he was coming with, but then they have to bring the clarity there. You know what I'm saying? So, deceptions arise when the truth is not being proclaimed as it ought to be. And I think that the church could have done a better job equipping folks so that these kinds of things that we're dealing with wouldn't flourish. And lastly, I would say, and I'm be honest, like normally I don't say this on my channel, but I think it needs to be said. To be completely honest, when you get the biblical worldview wrong, to Vocab's point, I mean, you can't rightly follow Christ. You know what I'm saying? And there's eternal implications with that. But then on top of that, I'm very concerned about my community. I'm concerned about African Americans. I mean, I think that we have a long history of injustices being done against us. There's a lot of work that we need to do right now. And the fact of the matter is, you can't build strong communities on weak ideas. And so the thing of it is, I look at it. So for me, I'm thinking about worldviews. And when you get the worldview wrong, it's going to have these implications that affect people in real life. And so when you have a God who's, well, I'll just leave it at that, you know what I'm saying? But I think you got to get the biblical worldview right. It has both eternal implications and also for right here, right now, in terms of how we build our communities. We can't afford to be building, on weak ideas. It's just that simple.
Yeah, that's what's up. I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that layout of things and just kind of helping to give us kind of a framework for why we do what we do. One of the things that I want to move the discussion along, because I think y'all have pretty much summed it up why this is a big discussion. Most of the New Testament was written because of error. It was in response to an error, to the point where Paul wanted to get a letter written to expedite getting those issues dealt with quickly. And so when you look at the Colossian heresies, they were dealing with cosmological flaws in their view of God, in their view of creation, in their view of Jesus. And so by having a higher view of lower things being above Christ. So he starts the first chapter off with Bars International with talking about how massive Jesus is. You know what I'm saying? Like talking about talking about the preeminence of Jesus Christ and the supremacy of Jesus Christ above all of the things that they're worshiping that are lower than him. And so when we talk about urban apologetics, we're talking about there's this fine balance in the Black community and in ethnic minority communities, in particular in America, but particularly African American and Latino or Black and Brown, where there has to be dignity affirmation of the Imago Dei and the restoration of that to the Imago Christi, right? But then on the other hand, that's Romans chapter 8, 29, Genesis 1, 26 through 28. If y'all hear some kids, that's just my kids up there doing their thing. And so now, because there has been, it's not only that in culture, in our society, in government, there's been oppression, suppression, and repression of Black identity and Brown identity in the culture, but it's also been done through the fallen ecclesia, the church that functions itself as the Western Christendom or white church. So you have all of these different challenges coming up where, because people are viewing Christianity as Western Christianity as culturally captive to Western white supremacy, they throw the baby out with the bathwater, and they own the etymology of Christianity only goes as far back as 400 years, versus seeing that Christianity has a 2,000-year history, but and then prior to that, another 1,500 years of scripture and leaders pointing to Jesus Christ. So when we talk tonight about Hebrew Israelites, we want to speak respectfully, right? But let's start to dig in, right? So when we talk about Hebrew Israelism, let's say that, can one of y'all just give a definition of what Hebrew Israelism in general is? Like George, it'd be dope if you chimed in real strong on that. Like, in a nutshell, what is it? Vocab, from your experience, what is it? And kind of, because I look through the feed, there's a lot of new people in here they're just starting to get their mind wrapped around. Like they just heard somebody was a Hebrew Israelite in their family. They don't even know what that is, what that means. So if we can help people out to kind of get their minds around it, definition wise, that'll be dope.
Hey, Brother George.
Oh, hey. Well, obviously, me having a personal experience from Hebrew Israelism, it's I guess it's how can I say? They target people who have, like Christians, majority that the people they target already believe, right? They believe the gospel, they believe in Jesus and all that. So what they'll do is they'll target the more ignorant Christians, obviously of these minority groups.
Yeah.
They'll go to prophecies of the Bible, because it also, for me, it's all about this end days, and a lot of Christians, these prophecies that I know now they've already been fulfilled, but they'll show that they haven't been fulfilled, and that these Israelites, the people of the Bible, they need to come into their identity. They need to start following the Torah, and it's usually like, for instance, myself being Polynesian, you're being colonialized, and you've lost, somewhat of some aspects of your heritage, not all of it.
Yeah.
And you've become westernized or whatnot. And then, like I said, these are Bible believers that already believe in the gospel, but now they're adding to that. These guys, by showing that your identity is important, and you're the best people on earth, and all this other stuff. So it's a feel good. It's a different type of feel good ministry. You have the feel good prosperity type preachers. This is a different version of that, obviously. And if you're from a minority group, usually you always got the negative stereotypes or whatnot. So to find out, oh, you know what, I'm God's chosen. You know, it sounds good. It sounds, you know, especially for this world that we live in. So that in a nutshell, that's, you know, if I could be like,
That's helpful.
yeah,
That's real. That's helpful. Yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah.
And coming from you, having had been in it, that's interesting. We're gonna have 100 million questions coming your way because we're gonna take some questions later.
yeah,
People
no worries.
asking you questions because I know they want to hear from you, brother. Brother Vocab, hit us up with what you would say Hebrew Israelism is in a nutshell.
Right. The key piece is what Mike and I, Faithful and I, were talking earlier today, and you know, we were discussing this. And the key piece is the identity doctrine. They don't call it the identity doctrine. They'll just say waking up to the fact that I'm a Hebrew or something like that. But the key piece is the identity doctrine. And there's a long version and a short version to kind of define that. But all Hebrew Israelites would agree at some level, they believe that it's true that many Black Americans or many Black folks in the Western Hemisphere are the true biblical descendants of the Israelites.
Yeah.
There's groups that add Hispanics, Native Americans, things like that. But see, that gets into varieties of Hebrew Israelism. There's no Hebrew Israelism, though, that doesn't have that piece, that basically descendants of enslaved persons, usually in the Western Hemisphere, are the Israelites. If that was all it is, we would just be talking about history and things like that. And we probably wouldn't be having this symposium, but that's not all it is. The other piece is always present in the identity doctrine. So that's the first component. The second component is this: your lineage matters in the sight of God. Notice I didn't say anything about who's saved or who's in the kingdom. I didn't say anything about that. I just said your lineage matters in the sight of God in a salvific ecclesiastical sense. Because someone might say, well, yeah, it does because culture. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying in the sense of it has salvific implications and ecclesiastical implications. And basically what that means is it has a bearing on your salvation and your standing in the body of Christ. And that's really, I think, where we have the real problem is that, and every variety of Hebrew Israelism that I think exists, that any of us know about, has those components. The varieties are different within that. So there's you're going into hardcore slavery, but notice that's still the same thing of that second component. Or there's, you'll be our brothers, but of a lesser stature. Just don't teach us, or something like that. But that's it. Those two things. And that's why it matters. That's why it matters.
Mike, you wanted to say something. Go ahead, my brother.
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of piggyback off of what Vocab just said, the problem is the emphasis is on the wrong thing from the vast majority of proponents of Hebrew Israelism. So the only thing that seems to bind them together for the most part is the identity doctrine, or I would say in the case of the majority, the belief that the descendants of the African diaspora are somehow the biblical Israelites. And that ends up taking precedence over the gospel message if we're talking about those who actually deal with the New Testament, or it basically has no, currency with those who are Tanakh only, but yet Tanakh onlyists will join together with those who deal with the New Testament, and they will fellowship and they will actually see each other as brothers only because of the identity doctrine. That becomes essentially their gospel message. It really becomes the umbrella under which all of them collectively join, and they're willing to leave everything else as secondary. So any sort of doctrinal position, whether it be, the nature of God, whether it be how salvation is attained, what is the status of Gentiles, who they perceive to be Gentiles, all of that is secondary in nature after the identity doctrine. The identity doctrine is the basis upon which they're building their faith, and at least for the vast majority. So that's unfortunately a problem. When you have a bad theological basis, you're going to have poor understanding of doctrine, poor understanding of what actually is essential according to the scriptures. These guys can't even agree if they should keep the law or not keep the law, right? Some of them claim to be Christian Israelites. Others claim to believe in, faith and keeping of the law. Some believe that they have to only keep the law. So there's really no consensus among them other than the identity doctrine. And once that happens, anything else is pretty much you know, it's up for debate, and it should never be that way, especially when it pertains to Jesus Christ, right? It's crazy to think how many beliefs they have concerning that.
And we got to remember how is the way, everybody, that they're, as far as the main way, trying to prove this claim. It's using scripture, misusing scripture. If you were doing DNA tests, okay. But if you're using bad eisegesis, then that's a different thing. It's inherently a religious claim to say because Deuteronomy 28, not because of 23andMe. It's an inherently religious claim. And so they want to make it like it's not. They'll say, well, it's just a claim of it. Nah, because how are you getting there? How are you getting there? And where do you go from there? And those are the problems.
Yeah, that's crazy that you say that, because that's why I wanted this next question to be, because I want all of y'all to chime in on this one. What, like, camp? When we say camp, number one, what do we mean? Number two, answer this. What are I want each person to name something different. What is a main biblical, theological, epistemological, and ontological problem with the camps? Like what like, so, you know, what is a camp? Give a key identifier of a camp, something different, each one of y'all. I want to hear from all of y'all. And then what is a key problem with the camp? We've already named some stuff, but I want us to keep naming that particular thing, you know, that keeps coming up, and we're going to read a verse on it. Why don't we start with our brother George?
Well, the camp that I came from didn't like that term camp. You
Wow.
know, the organization I was part of was called the Gathering of Christ Church.
Yeah.
So they have the facade, or, you know, the illusion that they are Christian. You know, they're using the word Christ and the word church. So now, you know, so that, you know, that's where I came from. And the problem with the camp that I was part of, it was always us. It was like us against the world. And when we're talking about the world, that's including other believers, other camps. You know, the camp that I was part of, they even had their own calendar. They even had their own year. They believe we're in the 1700s. It's a very, you know, like cults do. It's just it's all about just isolating yourself and then being controlled by the camp leaders. But just so much pseudo history. I think that's the key. And then just cherry picking. Not only did they cherry pick the Bible, they cherry pick history. You know, they'll just read one little bit there and then close the book, and you're like, wow. So yeah, I won't take up too much time, but that was my issue. You know, they just cherry picking, and then they what they do is they use that same. They would say that's what the Christians do. You know, John 3:16. You see, they're just taking that out of context, and that's not what it really means, and so on and so forth. So, you know, that's my take. But obviously, there's many more things, but.
Somebody else, Alfredo, you ain't said much.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to the camps specifically, and not all Hebrews, you saw what I did there, right? Not all Hebrews, right? So when it comes to the camp, I got to go with horrendous reading comprehension. Like, it's really bad. It's really bad. Like, you can't systematize a theology when you can't properly read a passage in the language that you were taught in. You know, there's such a thing as pronouns, and you know, knowing who's talking, why they're talking, to whom, at what point. You know, things that we actually learn in grade school. For some reason, they don't import those things into their Bible study. Then you couple that with certain presuppositions that they come into the text, which everyone, you know, does. We all bring our own little bag of presuppositions, and when we do that, our brain self-censors the text for us without even knowing. So you have to really let go of your presuppositions. And honestly, I hate this, not to be disrespectful, you got to learn how to read. You really do, you know. So that's my thing.
If I could, because reading comprehension, right? If I could just add just a quick story. I'm not trying to make fun or whatever, but there was one camp video, and a lot of the camps don't believe in the virgin birth, right? And then in the King James Version, it says, "And the birth of Jesus was on this wise." You see, brother, you need to be wise to know the birth. Do you know what I mean? It's not to make fun, but they'll read that and say, "See, you need to be wise," when obviously that Elizabethan English just means this is how it happens. So yeah,
One of my one of my least favorite, how do you say it, examples is where they'll speak about how unwise and foolish women are, and they usually mean basically women who look like them. They're not really talking about Jane, you know what I'm saying? And they turn this passage in Job and they read it about this, you know, this actor, this person. It's not really a person, you're being dumb. And you go to the passage, it's about an ostrich. The passage is about an ostrich. It's not even about a human. It's not about a Jew. It's not about a Gentile. It's not about a man. I guess it could be about a male ostrich or something, but it's about an ostrich. It's not, you're like, no, man, you just can't. And they're like, well, you got to be spiritual. The book wasn't given to you. The book wasn't given to you.
That's another famous one. That's it. Go to.
How about
Anybody
this?
else? Oh, go ahead.
So, for example, with the camps, Jeremiah 14:2, they see the word black in the King James and don't understand that the word kadaru in the Hebrew is a verb, not an adjective, and somehow will conclude that this is indicating that the King James translators somehow were saying that the not even realizing how the grammar in Hebrew works, because the subject is the gates, because the word kadaru is plural. Gates is plural, since they don't understand how Hebrew grammar in many cases actually works. Not all of them, but specifically the camps. They miss that obvious point, and then they come to irrational conclusions, not even realizing that in Job 30:28, the same root word that's used in the relevant word in Jeremiah 14:2 is rendered mourning in their own King James translation.
MOURNING, just so everyone's following. It's but yeah, you're totally right. That's why I've seen some of the camps, I'll be specific, Sakari is backing away from that reading of Jeremiah 14:2. At least that's what they told me in person.
Wow. So now I think we've talked a bit of, anybody else have something to say on that?
Adam, once he heard that word epistemology, Adam had to say something. I already knew that.
Come on, Adam.
Go ahead, Adam Coleman, you and your bricks.
Close. Actually, it was ontology. That's
okay. I knew it was something.
You're close. Yes. So real quick, I mean, I really would defer to Vocab and Mike and those guys in terms of defining camps. But I will say this though. I think what's interesting is that I used to kind of look at them as being analogous to denominations that we have in the church, but I think that's probably incorrect. I mean, they really function more like factions that you would see, like that Paul was talking about, like in Corinthians. You know what I'm saying? Because, so for example, in Vocab, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like somebody like an ISUPK would say something like, unless you're under like General Yohana, then you're not in the truth, or something like that.
Home of the truth. Yep.
Right. So even these factions, you know what I'm saying, it's weird because they affirm each other on the identity thing, but then they're willing to disown each other, at least in some instances, in regard to their organization. It's not even doctrinal. It's more so about being up under them. You know what I'm saying?
That is fact, because like, for instance, in GOCC, they would follow the Essenes calendar. So Richard would go in on the Christians. Why are you celebrating Christmas? It's, that's Satan, and Easter and New Year's, whatever, birthdays. Actually, no, he said it was all right to celebrate birthday, but and then you got to be keeping the Passover, right? He'll say that. And then the next breath, well, these other camps, they're following the Jewish calendar. They're also worshiping Satan. Like, I'm like, oh man.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
But as far as the ontology, I just want to say real quick, I can make it real brief, but I mean, my whole channel is True ID, so the real you and Mago Day. And one thing that I find, and I've said this in videos before, is that I think that when you look at the whole concert of scripture, I'm saying, it's very clear that the foundation of who we are is that we're made in the image of God. You know what I'm saying? and that's reiterated through the gospel, and that, covenantally. I'm saying, I'm not going to get into that here, but with these guys is they take the ethnic aspect of who they are, and they elevate that aspect of their identity above everything. I'm saying, where it's clear in scripture, that's obviously not the case. So when you think about ontology in terms of who we are, their doctrine of man, their anthropology, I'm saying, is just way off. It's way off. They start with the nationalistic or ethnic understanding of who man is or whatever. And really, you got to go back further than that. You got to go back to Genesis, Genesis 1:26-27.
That's good, man. That's good. So I think that's easy to kind of chop up, is, kind of challenge the camps on just the fallacies of the camps. But I think we need to kind of discuss the moderates. What is a moderate? Y'all gotta go to town on that. What's a moderate, and who are the key? We ain't shouting nobody out. What is a moderate?
Hold on, Pastor. Is that a
no.
rule?
You can say names if you want.
Okay, I just wanted to clear it with you first.
No. I'm when I say shout them out, I ain't trying to big up nobody, but I'm just saying, like, but just in the sense of, what is a moderate? Why do we call them moderates as opposed to what? You understand what I'm saying? Because when you say moderate Muslim, are the camps extremists? So because that's kind of what the moderate term is, kind of trying to counterbalance something that's extreme. But anyway, I want to focus on that real quick. So what's a moderate?
Well, if I could tell you how it developed, Faithful, I'd love to hear, especially your recollection on this. Okay, when we would have these discussions about Hebrew Israelites, we got a lot of people who were not in the camps, who were not affiliated with One West. They would come and say, "Hey, why are you painting us all with a broad brush?" They would say this kind of thing constantly. And it didn't seem very descriptive to call them non-One Westers. That's just saying it's not really telling you anything about them. And so there was a struggle for terminology. And I don't know who first out of us, I actually don't know, maybe Faithful knows. It's kind of bubbled up in some of our live chats, started using the term moderates to describe the non-One Westers, the non-campers. And so it was really in reaction, because we would try to explain all the time, hey, this is not everybody, but what word do you use, right? When you're trying to explain this is not everybody that holds the 12 tribes chart up, that, those kinds of things, right? So when we would start talking about this at first, and I distinctly remember this, so I'm telling you a true timeline, right? As they say, check the timeline. At first, some of the Hebrew Israelites claimed we stole that terminology from them. I'll be specific. My man from Chicago, who we're friends, Mikael Ben Israel, who's affiliated with Israel of God, who I met when I went to Chicago. I think we had a cool time and all that. He said, oh, they got that from me. I was the first person to come out to use the term moderates to describe the non-One Westers, the non-campers, because he wanted to make sure Israel of God, which is bigger than most of the camps, he made a fair point there, wasn't lumped in, right? So he actually said that. Now, I never heard him use it. We didn't steal it from him. That was his delusion of grandeur, but whatever. The point is, though, he was saying he was already using it like it wasn't a problematic term. Now the moderates it's like strike back, and they're like, they call us that, but but they don't like any terms or categories. And they'll say stuff like this. That's a white European thing to classify things or something like that. You know what it really is? And I'm gonna just go ahead and say this. A lot of you Hebrew Israelites, and I'm not saying all, but a lot, are cowards, and you don't like to put what you believe in writing, and you don't like terminology because you want to play slippery games. And once you have a name, we stand on Christian. We're okay saying I'm a Christian, like in Peter and Acts. You guys want to play and everything and do all this because a lot of you guys are actually just cowards, and you're changing the doctrine so fast that you're flipping in and out anyway. I see Nefer Nitty shaking your head. I feel like you're agreeing with me on this.
I'm agreeing with you 100,000% because it's the same thing with, I had somebody tell me that today. Moderates is a term that Vocab made up, and y'all like classifying us, and that's racist and this, that, and the third. But I never heard the term moderate until it came from a moderate's mouth. He told me he was a moderate. So y'all need to get together and come up with some sort of consensus as to what you guys want to be called so that we can address you as such. But having one person over here say it's okay and another person over there say it's not okay, that's not going to work. And then they try to manipulate that and say that it's a form of disrespect. It's not disrespect. It's simply a title. And to your point about them not wanting to have what they say held to them, they don't want to be fixated or put in a corner by admitting what it is they believe, because that way they can switch the conversation at any point and say, well, I didn't say that, or I don't believe that. And that's another issue. It's another point of danger, because what they're looking to do, like you said, is adapt to the circumstances that they find themselves in whatever the conversation is, and then thereby deceive people. It's easier to deceive someone if you don't know where I'm coming from, for real.
You know what it is? Never, and I think it's because to them, almost everything is on the table except for the identity doctrine. And so what it is you have this center thing that's weak and vulnerable. And so you have to have all these pieces around it. You're trying to protect it. As they say back in the day, circling the wagons. And so they are willing to trade all kinds of key important facts and hold things that are directly in tension with each other, where they disagree with themselves, as long as it protects this thing right here. And so it's like systematically being consistent, it's like it's not a very important value to a lot of these guys, because the key value is to hold on to that identity. And so if Jesus has to be God for me to hold on to it, or he doesn't need to be God, or I need to believe in the Trinity or not believe in the Trinity, or what if instead of an elder I have a soldier and a captain instead of an elder, whatever it is, I'll do as long as I can hold on to this.
And that is part of what Faithful was saying earlier. That's what makes it. It's not Christ-centric, it's ethnocentric. And in the context of a religion, in the context of how you serve God, God is supposed to be in the center. But all things are, like you said, fluid, including who God is, except for the one concrete thing for them is who they are.
Yeah.
Who I am, that's non-negotiable. Who God is, we could talk about that.
Yeah. Let me say this real quick. Just real quick. So I have multiple books written by moderate Hebrew Israelites. I have this one. 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 And I have this one. I have others. Not in one book. The main premise is identity. There is, like Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15, I brought to you that which is of first importance, that Christ died, he was buried, and got up from the grave. And so when somebody said, well, like I remember in your conversation with the dude from Sakari, where he was saying, well, what is the gospel? He tried to take you to Mark chapter 1. But if you go to Ephesians chapter 3, it talks about the fact that the gospel was a mystery up until that point, even though there were pointers to the gospel in Tanakh and Ketuvim and Torah, Tanakh, Ketuvim, you know what I'm saying? Like all of those books. Like when it got to Christ, Christ would conceal him being the Christ for a while until the actual event happened. Then he went public with it. So you can't say that there's a different gospel over here and over there, and identity was the more sufficient thing to talk about. And so the problem is, like every single book, you can't get a clear gospel presentation out of cats. You can't get how is a person saved. You can't get it out of cats. Now, when we talk about this, they're going to say, well, we're painting all the moderates this way. We were talking earlier about our conversation with some moderates, like your conversation, Nefer, Alfredo, your conversation, like asking, like, what do you believe about God? Like, who is he? What's his makeup? What's he like? And what's the gospel? And you got the rigmarole, and it's like, bro, like, give us some clarity on what the doggone gospel is and what do you believe about God. You got this group of moderates that believe that the Bible needs to be reconstructed, that we don't have a safe Bible to utilize for instructions. You got those on this side that would say we believe like this, but we don't believe in Paul anymore because he infringes upon our identity doctrine too much. So like talk to me about this thing, man.
Well, I want to say this too, man. So, and I agree with Vocab. I think, and Nefer Nitty, and actually everything has been said in terms of the cowardice piece. But just if we keep it in 100, we keep it all the way 100. I think another aspect that we have to acknowledge is that some of these, and I'm gonna just say, it's not just the moderates. This probably apply to the camps as well. But a lot of them are disingenuous. I'm saying they're literally deceptive. I'm saying because they want to snuggle their way into the Christian fold and sort of basically get behind enemy lines and subvert, or I'll just use a more basic word, undermine what's going on in the church. You got people who will disguise themselves as Christians and go attend Bible studies in certain churches. They're gonna, I had somebody at my church, I'm saying, a couple years ago who tried to get up in there, and then once we identified what was going on, he had to, he took that L. I'm saying, but the bottom line is, I'm saying, these guys, and Vocab, you can speak to this as well, is that church I'm thinking about, maybe I should name them, but
go ahead.
That have split, particularly in Florida. I know they do the Apologetics event down there.
Yep, the other elder secretly waged a subversive war at the Bible study groups without the other elder knowing, and when it came out, lost half the church.
Right. So when it comes to the church, let's keep it 100. When it comes to the Christian rap community, I'm saying, you have individuals who want to disguise themselves, I'm saying, as if and they'll try to tuck in their Hebrew Israelism when they're around Christians, I'm saying, to sort of build a bridge, but it's not genuine. I'm saying, when you're dealing with the New Testament, the preaching of the gospel, the apostles was 100. I'm saying, you knew what they was about. When they showed up with the gospel, you knew what it was. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't no deceptive. I could be wrong. I don't know of any Christian apologist that's tucking into Christianity to try to get up in some of these camps and disrupt what they're doing. I'm saying, we keep it 100 with who we are and what we're about.
We don't need to do that anyway, because the Jesuits and the FBI are taking care of that for us anyway. So
right. But the last one I'm gonna say is, now here's what's interesting. In Vocab, you can attest to this. I think you probably know where I'm going. In terms of tucking in what they're about and what they believe in order to gain an advantage for their cause, they act exactly like Muslims. There's a doctrine or perspective saying within Islam where you can actually be deceptive if it's for the cause of jihad.
Taqiyya. You're talking about taqiyya.
Thank you. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so in that regard, they act just like Muslims. I'm saying, another false worldview. And so I think we need to call these dudes out. These dudes, they're not being real. I'm saying, like, be who you be. If you don't believe in the Trinity, okay, cool. Let's dialogue about that. But don't try to tuck in who you are and try to snuggle up to some Christians. And then what's crazy, then they'll turn around and talk about, oh, well, no, Christians, y'all got to join to a Hebrew. And you trying to join us. You know what I'm saying? You tucking in.
You know why? You know why, Adam?
With that, bro.
It's because every parasite needs a host.
Wow.
Every parasite needs a host. That's why. But if there was true kinship.
Hold on, let me say something, because I'm hearing something in the chat. Let me just say something real quick.
Oh, deal with the chat.
Okay. So let me just say this, family. Like, the church isn't like in trouble. Let's just get that off the table. Like, it's not like 100,000 of y'all leaving the church for Hebrew. So don't try to act like cats is coming all up in your meetings. You don't understand what I'm saying? Like, bro, people are becoming believers all the time. So like this, let me just say this. If we're going to have respectable dialogue, particularly with Hebrew Israelites, like, I'll hear people see y'all are, because y'all are in trouble, y'all are agents, and people are leaving the church, and you're trying to save your bag. Like what are we talking about? A bag and all that. Like, for us, like, most of the people on here don't even get paid. Like, ain't nobody getting paid for being on here tonight. So when we like, nobody's on here trying to promote an agenda, because I keep seeing that word in. I'm looking at both chats and I'm saying, what agenda are you talking about? We're not working.
I got an agenda.
Like of course that agenda. But I'm saying, like, there's no white men that are paying us to come against Hebrew Israelism so that we can be agents and stop people from leaving Western Christianity and Christendom. Like, will y'all please stop doing that? We can just say we disagree. I'm fine with that. But don't lie and bear false witness against the thing you say as a commandment by doing that. Like, it's not cool, man. So anyway, y'all carry on, man. I just had to say that because it's kind of corny.
But to Nefer Nitty's point, the agenda is the gospel. That's our agenda,
Amen.
point blank. You know what I'm saying? And all these other guys, I mean, I think it's a sign of weakness when you can't meet somebody, you know what I'm saying, in terms of how they're coming at you. You know, we're being real with where we coming from, while y'all guys are, you know, ducking and dodging, but yet you want to, cast that on us as if we've been accepted. We're telling you exactly what we're about. We about that gospel. We're about getting the truth out. Plain and simple.
That's right.
So somebody's like, let me show you the former record of Christians. I can show you, like, I used to be involved with the Nation of Islam to an extent. So, like, I can show you a litany of people, like okay, people, like, and we would also say that, a lot of times, when people talking about people leaving Christianity, a lot of people that I talk to in a lot of these cults, because I talk to them a lot of times, if you want to call them cults or ideologies, I don't want to be disrespectful. Like when you press them, like most 90% of the ones I come across, when you press them on whether or not they were discipled, or forget about that. If you ask them what the gospel was that they understood, they don't communicate a clear gospel. Number one. Number two, if you begin asking them about biblical Christology, about an understanding of sanctification and discipleship, and you begin to ask them about just basic Christian doctrine, they don't even understand basic Christian doctrine. So which is the church's fault in those instances where that didn't happen, or they weren't a believer in the first place. And so when we talk about that as a reality, like, I want to emphasize, like, this is why I've been on the church really, really hard, particularly the African-American led church, is like, there has to be a commitment to biblical discipleship in a way that has to be way more robust than it's been in the past. And so and I'm not saying that there aren't churches that have been making disciples, but you're going to have to be knowledgeable of what's going on in the streets, and particularly with your congregants, and being able to combat those things because of the need for engagement of the truth. So, yeah.
I just want to say something real quick on that. I don't mean to, jump over anybody, but just to kind of co-sign what you said. Now, Vocab, Faithful, y'all the OGs, but y'all been doing it a lot longer than I have with the Hebrew Israelites. But I'll just say, in terms of my experience, my personal experience, I have not come across not one single Hebrew Israelite, whether they claim to have used to be a Christian or not, including individuals I see in the chat room right now, who can clearly articulate what it is that Christians believe. They can clearly articulate Orthodox Christianity. I mean, whether it be the doctrine of the Trinity, what we mean, when we talk about the dual natures of Christ, any of that. You know what I'm saying? I have not met not one. Yeah. And that tells me a lot. So when you talk about coming out of these different churches, I used to go to this church, I used to go to that church, you start talking about, well, I'm not gonna call nobody out, but certain prosperity preachers, I know what kind of church it came out of, because I came out of one. You know what I'm saying? But God's grace, I didn't get involved in these deceptions. And that's why I'm so passionate about individuals really seeing the truth, man. Like, you can't judge the entire church based upon that one experience that you had, or your own personal experience in the church.
Amen.
Come on, man.
Amen. So no, Nefer, you was about to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, before we move on, I just, we have a wide variety of people in our audience. And so certain terminologies that we may use, it might go over some people's heads. So I just want to make the argument in some very basic when it relates to the conversation we were just having about moderates and them hiding their identity as Israelites. And it just as a word of caution, because I personally have experienced recently a couple of different moderates, or people who I thought were Christians all along and just now coming out as moderate, who try to influence me with regards to apologetics. Like, I've literally had to do, and I'm telling you, I really want to do a video specifically about him, but he told me that apologetics isn't biblical, that we were never told to defend the faith. Now, if I were a weak-minded Christian who didn't understand the gospel and what my charge is from the Holy Spirit, he might have persuaded me with that nonsense. Yeah. And so there are Christians who they're not as well versed in the Bible. As Brother George said, they pick on the ignorant, right? The historically ignorant and the biblically ignorant. People who aren't as well versed, who will be confronted with these things and won't know how to respond, and will be swept away with that. So I just want you guys to be on guard. Like, one of the questions that we specifically asked when I was talking to some of these moderates. It was a public conversation, so I don't have a problem saying their names, but whatever. I asked specifically, what do you believe about the Holy Spirit? Is the Holy Spirit the third person of the God? Like, they'll tell you they believe in the Holy Spirit. They'll tell you they believe in Jesus. If you ask the question like that, you'll never get the answer you're looking for. If you ask the question, do you believe in Jesus? They'll tell you yes. But then when you start getting deeper into who Jesus is and what his function is as God and these types of things, that's when you start seeing them shut down and they don't want to give you straightforward answers. And it's because of that hiding, because of that sneakiness that Adam was just talking about. They're not going to tell you the full story of their doctrine because they're trying to get you on the same page with the things that they know you believe, and then that way they can win your affection and put your guard down, and then before you know it, you done got swept into some false doctrine.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things, real quick before you come on, Faithful, one of the things, I don't necessarily believe that the disbelief among a lot of those Blacks or African American, whatever you want to call us, who, and those ethnic minorities, is fully exegetical. I don't necessarily think it's really exegetical. I think it's cultural. I literally think it's cultural and spiritual. Like when I look at different ones, they say, well, I'm returning to my culture. And I say, I don't have a problem with anybody returning to their culture. The question that's never a question. The question is your culture submissive to Jesus Christ? Like for us, does it come under the cross? You know, there was a book written by Richard Niebuhr called Christianity and Culture, and he has these different categories of Christ in culture, Christ above culture. He had all of these different, and asking you to really choose which one, what kind of category do you kind of filter through. And one of the things we have to be careful of as Christians is we have to let our Christology influence our sociology. We can't let our sociology influence our Christology. That was always an emphasis by God in Scripture. Whenever someone says this book is about us, you miss the fact that Jesus says, you search the Scriptures, for in them you think you find eternal life, but they all speak of me. So when we look at that reality, Jesus is the true Israel. And so that's a whole nother conversation. But I'm saying that to say, like, it's very important for us to be careful of cultural idolatry that we make exegesis, because what ends up happening is it's really showing, when you do cultural exegesis, you're really responding more to white supremacy than people who you saying is believing in Western Christianity, which Christianity isn't Western. We are against the culture of Western Christianity, but we're about the orthodox of global Christianity, invisible church. And so when you react really strongly trying to restore your ethnic identity without the gospel, you'll never really truly be the best of who God created you to be. Why? Because Christ restores humanity to being true, real humanity in a way that we can't do on our own. So anyway, I know you, Faithful, you have something to say, but I had to jump in there with that.
No, that was beautiful, Pastor. What I wanted to add on is what the sister Nefer was saying, that it seems that these people want to kind of play this little game where they want us to behave like Christians, and yet they themselves in many cases won't behave like Christians. And I think this will allow us to segue into something else that took place with the sister herself.
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening more specifically with the moderates, because we know what the camps believe, right? The camps are very overt in their disrespect and in the way that they challenge Christians, whereas the moderates want to kind of do this double speak where they want to speak Christianese, as the brother BK Apologist was noting, and yet then want to turn around and switch it up when you disagree with them, more specifically when it has to do with the identity doctrine, right? So what ends up happening is that we find cases where you have people who will make baseless assertions based on conjecture, based on isolating specific sources. And then when you check them on those sources, you actually show them the context, or you do anything to kind of practice good, proper contextual reading of the material. What they end up doing is they engage in ad hominem attacks. Or in a case that happened with me recently, you have individuals that will they'll make claims over the years, and you will call them out to debate. And instead of debating you, what they'll insist is that you're a troll, that you're doing this and that, and eventually end up blocking you or doing something to that effect. And then when someone else challenges them, they want to call them out and try to debate them. And then when you ask them why you won't debate me, then they want to kind of take it somewhere else, and it'd be, try to, insinuate something that you didn't actually say about them, misrepresent your words, and then take it to another level, which, makes them look crazy. And then they want to make you look crazy in the process to try to attempt to discredit you.
Facts.
So, yeah.
If I could jump in real quick. They're trying to answer a question that all humans are really, they have to answer. That is identity and agency, right? Who am I and what's my purpose? Now, the problem with some Hebrew Israelites, again, you hear me, right? Some, not all, but some, their answer is within the confines of white supremacy. Because the Bible says that you are the Tselem, you are the imager of God. That's your true image, your true ID, right? What white supremacy tells you is that you are not an imager of God, you're a crayon, right? And you're in this box. Oh, and by the way, the white crayon is the best one. So now you got all these crayons fighting within this box. And you think you're getting revenge, but you're still playing the game. And as long as you play that game of white supremacy, somebody always loses. The gospel says, get out the box and everybody wins. And that's the thing we're trying to convey to you guys. So,
Right.
Yeah, that's mad important.
Said too. Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, brother.
It's important what you said too, is that, for any given statement, somebody will say, well, that doesn't apply to me. And the reality is, just like, BK Apologist said, is that, yeah, I mean, we understand that that Hebrew Israelism, the Hebrew Israelites are not a monolith. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
I think we've made that clear. You know what I'm saying? And so to keep going back and forth about like, oh, well, but over here we do this and we do that. And then the reality is, when you talk about, oh, well, we're not like that, you're talking about like the 3 people that you ride with, you know what I'm saying? Whereas the vast majority are on this tip that we're dealing with. I mean, it gets really frustrating, you know what I'm saying? But going to Faithful's point, man, like we have to, the reality is this, if I get on, this is what comes with being submitted to a pastor, you know what I'm saying? Like if I get online, I'm acting a fool, you know what I'm saying? Then I know, like my pastor's probably watching right now. You know what I'm saying? I have to deal with that. You know what I'm saying? There's accountability. But in addition, amongst the urban apologetics community, you know what I'm saying, in terms of those that we affirm and who are active and faithful to biblical order, and I'm gonna leave that alone. But the reality, I just say, for example, the folks on this panel, I mean, if one of us is tripping, you know what I'm saying, trust and believe, somebody else is going to hit them up on the DM or give them a call, like, hey, you probably could have handled that a little bit better. I know, for example, Alfredo Valentin has been very active in squashing certain things that have gone on, and individuals on this panel have had times where they were able to kind of mend some things and where they kind of went a little left. But I'm just saying, even amongst us, there's accountability. You know what I'm saying? We're not just out here acting reckless. But what I see from the community, from the Hebrew Israelite community, is that you can have cats talking reckless, acting reckless, or whatever, and then cats will either just turn a blind eye to it or co-sign. Right. And it's just real despicable, man. I mean, it's just real despicable. I think that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. So there was a recent issue where something similar happened between the urban apologetics community and the Hebrew Israelite. And they were just like, I mean, they made 5-hour videos about how urban apologists are either disrespectful or affiliated with disrespectful people and this, that, and the third. But yet when this person, this Dante Fortston individual, who I never come across in my life, drags my name through the mud and disrespects me unprovoked because I don't know who he is, I didn't see any of that accountability coming from the moderates, the Christian Israelites, the Hebrew Israelites, the same ones that are arguing about how Christians are supposed to conduct themselves. Why are they not at the same time holding their own to that same standard? And so it just showed me, like, again, there's a specific individual in mind, like, you want me to accept or believe that you have my best interest at heart when you call yourself a Christian Israelite. But then when the Israelites do something, you don't display that same Christian character to check them. Nobody said anything to this dude about the way he came at a woman, which supposedly is against their doctrine anyway. So,
I mean, how quick was it before he called you ratchet. Was it? It was like the first post back, I think, or so. It was like right in the beginning, right?
So the first video, like I said, I don't know him. He made a video reviewing one of my videos, and I really truly considered whether to sue him for libel, because libel or defamation of character is intentionally publishing a knowingly false statement with the intent to disparage someone's character. So he's calling me a false teacher, and then in his 2-hour video, he's misrepresenting things that I've said. So that's the intentionally lying thing. And then he's omitting things that I have said. So he's calling me a liar and liar all throughout the video, but I don't know him. So I was very careful in my response not to react in kind, because I know other Christians are watching, and I know I'm a representative of Christ, and I don't want to hear all that nonsense about, oh, you Christian, you're supposed to behave a certain way. So I was careful about that. But I tried my best to respond to everything he said, but not only did they not stop him, like I mentioned, but he kept going, and he called me a hood rat and said I need to be on Love and Hip Hop, which I don't even watch trash like that. So I found it, like, he says that I hate Black people and Black culture, but if I use Ebonics, all of a sudden I'm a hood rat and I'm ratchet and I don't deserve to be. Like, where we do that at? Isn't that Black culture? So what, basically you banging on me for expressing my Black culture while at the same time telling me I hate Black people?
Yeah. So I think that, as we've, made a lot of discussion on just talking about, really dealing with, the camps and dealing with particularly the moderates. I think one question someone had wanted to ask, what do you believe about their salvation? So I heard that on one chat. I'm gonna take that as a question, and then on the other side, I'm gonna talk, because the chats are so different. The one on YouTube is, a lot more just other people. Most of the one on Facebook on my page is more Christians and that type of thing. We have a few Hebrew Israelites on there as well, and there's some moderates on here as well on the on my page. So what now? People are asking the salvation question. When we talk about what soteriology is, can a person that's a Hebrew Israelite be authentically converted?
Yeah, it seems like
yeah.
Go ahead, George. Go ahead, George. I want to hear from George first. Go ahead, brother.
Oh, no, sorry, I was just waving out to my family and them. They were leaving.
Oh, you good? You good?
Yeah.
My bad.
Are raising your hand? No, I'm just stretching.
I think he's a testament to that, though, right?
But what do you mean by, like, what's required for Hebrew Israelite salvation? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Basically,
Yes.
I'm asking, can a person call themselves a Hebrew Israelite and be a Christian? I'm not saying that's not true. That can't be true. But that's a question that's come in. Can a person say, I'm a Hebrew Israelite, I believe that my heritage is I'm an Israelite, and I'm not going to necessarily, whether they pick a tribe or not. Is salvation by grace through faith in Christ alone, or is it grace through faith plus I can't acknowledge my ethnic identity? So is the ethnic identity an obstacle to their soteriology? So basically asking, can I be Hebrew Israelite and not be a Christian? Let's not use that term. Be born again. Yep.
Well, my question would be, obviously we see Jews being saved in the New Testament. My question would be, how did you come to the conclusion that you are a Jew? Do you have the genealogical records like the ancient Jews did? So on and so forth. You know what I mean? Did you find out?
What if they say, hey, I believe in Ephesians 2:8-9, but I do believe that Deuteronomy 28 is a prophecy, one of the many prophecies that point to the fact that we are the people.
Well, I would find that a contradiction, because Deuteronomy 28 is part of the Old Covenant. And if Jesus brought in a new covenant, which means those things are now done away with, in that, because Deuteronomy 28 is only works if the Old Covenant is in place, right? So how can you say that you're in the new covenant, but then you found out you're a Jew because the old covenant. Like it's
Well, it's a sign and a wonder, brother. It's a sign and a wonder. And if you're not, and brother, if you're not yet saved, it shows in the New Testament that you can still be functioning under the old covenant, even though you haven't trusted Jesus and come into the new covenant. What would you say to that?
Sorry, what was that again?
Some nonsense.
I know, right? But this is stuff I hear. Like, in other words, if I'm like, there are people that would say I was under the law as a covenant until I became a Christian. Now I'm under the new covenant. Would you say with it? But that showed me that I was a believer, that I was a Jew or Hebrew, but now I'm a Christian, but I'm still a Hebrew.
Well, in the old covenant, there were laws considering ignorance, right? Now, how can God judge you if you're ignorant of your identity, but then he curses you because you haven't been keeping the Sabbath, but you didn't know you were supposed to? Yet there's laws in the Old Testament saying that if you did commit if you broke a law in ignorance,
unintentional sins. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's a self-refuting doctrine like this. Is there's so many holes and it just contradicts the. If you're finding your identity through Deuteronomy 28, and then you're saying you're a new covenant Christian, it contradicts. They contradict one another. So.
This is the last thing I'm gonna say on that. So go ahead, Nefer. Go ahead.
There's just so much to be said about that specific point, because I forgot which one of the panelists mentioned. I want to say it was you, Brother George, when you said that they add. It's like they believe they have the gospel, but they add identity to it. You don't need to add nothing to Jesus, baby. You don't need to add your identity to feel more secure in Christ. And then BK talked about it's a response to white supremacy. So, not to beat a dead horse, but this conversation that I just had with this individual, where I reviewed all of the evidence that he put forth, basically what happened was he was sharing snippets of information and then not putting it in its proper context. And the paragraph before or the paragraph after would refute the entire argument. So one of these articles entitled "The Proto-History of Igbo Jewish Identity" specifically talks about how the Igbo people did not have an identity and didn't feel like they could root themselves in tangible history. And then Christian missionaries told them that they were Jews, because Christian missionaries were telling everybody that they were Jews in an effort to promote this Hamitic hypothesis, which you can Google, right?
And they did that over here as well. They did that in the South Pacific as well. You can see that they did that here as well.
So it tells you in the same article that he's reading from that these missionaries had this hypothesis in their mind, this ideology that they wanted to paint everybody Hebrew so that they could justify slavery, or paint everybody Jew so they could justify slavery. But it's in the same article, right? And then, so basically they were searching for an identity. And then in the other article, I forget the title of it, Black Judaism, Politics versus Religion, something to that effect. It talks about the same exact issue taking place in America, where we're responding to white supremacy. We've been told that we're nothing. We don't know our ancestors. Our history has been taken from us. And the white man is pushing out, at that time, literature that says that Black people are dogs and less than human. And so in response to white supremacy, they chose the already established identity of Judaism and attached themselves there too. So what is this really when we boil it down?
Wow.
It is an intent to correct, or it's basically trauma that you're trying to heal, but you're using identity to heal that wound instead of finding the true solution, which is Christ. And so if Christ is not enough, that means that you're basically saying that the gospel, the what was done on the cross is not enough for you, because you still feel like you're missing something. And that's the issue. That's why it's a problem, because you place the identity of your culture and your supposed history above and more important, and you see it as more valuable and more healing than the blood of Christ.
So let me ask this. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I want to chime in. So to your question too, I want to make, I think it's important to make a distinction between justification and sanctification. You know what I'm saying? When we're talking about justification, we're talking about, what you alluded to earlier with Ephesians, that salvation is, by faith alone, through grace alone, so forth. You know what I'm saying? So in order to get in the door, so to speak, in terms of the people, to being among the people of God, that's a work of Christ. You know what I'm saying? Now, when we're talking about sanctification, you know what I'm saying? So now that you're in the door, so to speak, among the people of God, and you're gradually working with the Holy Spirit, I'm saying, to be more like Christ-like, right? To be in line with, you know, what he lays out in his word. That's, you know, that's all a part of sanctification. Now, when it comes to that, you know, that's where, you know, getting in the Bible, understanding what God's communicating to his people, that's where that comes into play. You want to align yourself with it the more and more you grow. Now, the thing of it is, you could be mistaken about your ethnic identity. I'm saying, and that's not going to be a justification issue. I'm saying you could be mistaken about a lot of things. You know what I'm saying? You know, and still get in. You mean if you have a mistaken belief about your identity, that's not going to, you know, X you out. However, you know what I'm saying, once you, you know, come in through the blood, you know, through the cross, you know what I'm saying, as a matter of sanctification, we want to get the Bible right. Because we want to walk with God more assuredly. You see what I'm saying? That's why it's so important, you know what I'm saying, that we address these kinds of things. So when it comes to this identity claim, you know, for and people can correct me if I'm wrong, how I approach it is that you know, as a matter of discipleship, you know what I'm saying, we need to get the Bible right. You know what I'm saying? The gospel, you know what I'm saying, that's primary. You know what I'm saying? You got to get the gospel. Now, granted, you know, Vocab can speak into their salvific claims as well. But as far as the identity claims specifically, you know what I'm saying, in terms of who you are ethnically, I think that's more of a sanctification issue in terms of getting the Bible right and not misusing Deuteronomy 28 and so on and so forth.
Can I make a caveat? Can I make a caveat? I'm sorry. You know, not everybody on the panel is African American, but I know that nobody on the panel denies their culture in an effort to be accepted as a Christian, or thinking that we have to shed our culture in order to truly accept the gospel. We don't believe, we don't identify as Israelites, but whatever culture we already do have, we don't try to divorce ourselves from it. So they create this false argument by saying that, oh, as a Black person who doesn't agree with Hebrew Israelite doctrine, that you somehow hate culture, you somehow hate Black people, you somehow think that you need to divorce. No, like my tagline is Christian Black woke. Like Pastor Mason wrote a book called Woke Church. Like we're all unapologetically, you know, whoever we are. I'm not going to say Black for the whole panel because not everybody's Black. Right, you know, but the point still is we accept ourselves as we are in the position that God birthed us in terms of genealogy, wherever we may be. So it's not an issue of accepting your culture. It's an issue of appropriating another culture to soothe your ego, basically.
Yeah, I think one of the things that Adam brought up, I think, again, is biblical anthropology. When you study the Torah, Navihim, and Ketuvim, law, prophets, and writings, the movement of the story of the Bible is about God re-inheriting the nations, like through Christ, right? So Heiser brings that out a little bit. My pastor brings it out a little bit as well. You know, when we look at when the scattering of the nations happened in Genesis through languages, and then you have the Deuteronomy 32 verses 8 and 9 is beautiful because what it lays out, and I talk about this in our upcoming book, is that verses 8 and 9 really talk about God distributing the nations to the sons of God. And so that's that distinguished group they're not angels, they're not cherubim, they're not seraphim, they're not the four living creatures. They're one of the high beings under God who are his heavenly family. He distributed the nations over them to rule, and Israel became his inheritance. And when Israel became his inheritance, Israel became his inheritance in order for him, the direct, based on Psalm 82, verse 1 and 2, that's why he brings the counsel and the judgment, because a lot of times we don't realize that there were multiple falls. There wasn't just the fall of Lucifer, there was the fall of the sons of God. There were multiple rebellions. And so when you look biblically and exegetically at those multiple rebellions, God's desire was for Israel to be a light to the nations in order to draw the nations back to Yahweh post Genesis chapter 3. By bringing Christ, and then in bringing light to the nations, they would come and the nations were to learn of God. But God divorced the northern and the southern tribe. And because he divorced the northern and southern tribe, in the Gospels, we begin to see that Jesus weeps over Jerusalem, not just because of the destruction of the temple, but because of the fact that this is going to be a massive scattering that's going to be worse than the first scattering. under King Assuerus when it happened in 2 Kings chapter 15 through chapter 17. So when we look at that and then see that in Revelation, it's pointing to the fact that Jesus Christ is the ultimate one who was able to take care of not only the fall of us, but the effects of the falls of those other spiritual beings who can't get saved, but we can. And now in Revelation chapter 7 and the other passage in Revelation 9, we begin to see that there is a multitude that can't be counted. And then we see in the last chapter of Revelation that Israel does go into the saved and believing Israel does go into the eternal temple in Jerusalem. But then, like Faithful talks about later on in that verse, you see that now non-Israelites are in the city, which means they went into those gates as well. So when we try to like when we're talking about this thing, this is an important thing because this is the story of God's redemptive work based on the scriptures. And so when we're talking about this stuff, we're imploring you that these things are not peripheral ideas, but these are core doctrines that's the bigger story of the Bible about it. Of course, God gave his statutes to Jacob. He did. But it wasn't for Jacob only. He gave it to Jacob to be an example to the nations. It wasn't so that Jacob could hog the gospel. That's why you have the sojourner and stranger in Leviticus 19, verses 8 through 19. I mean, I can keep going. But when we're talking about all of this and we're laying all of this out, we're imploring you because this is an important anthropological, Christological, and soteriological topic. So anyway,
I just want to say, hey, yo, for anybody watching the video, they're going to play that last 3 minutes back. You just gave them the whole salvific plan of God from Genesis to Revelation. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's powerful, man. And what's crazy is, and this was it's so wild to me. So Vocab mentioned how, like, they'll attach to this identity doctrine, this notion that if you're not an Israelite, you're less than, or you're out of the kingdom entirely. And what's so crazy is, given what you were just saying, I'm thinking about, in Isaiah, where it talks about, Israel is the light to the nations. I mean, let's just be honest with it. In their I don't know if you want to call it racism, ethnism, or whatever you want to call it, but in getting that aspect of their doctrine wrong and treating the Gentiles like over here as if they can't be in right standing with God equal to anybody else, they actually undermine the call of God on Israel. Yeah. So they're trying to esteem Israel. They've actually done the opposite. They've actually undercut one of the primary purposes. Maybe actually, I say the primary purpose, I'm saying, of Israel, which is being a vehicle for God to bring about his salvific work in the earth.
Can I add on to that real quick, just very quickly? So the other problem is that they make this identity claim a priority. Now, I'm not saying all of them are doing this, because you may have your odd Hebrew Israelite here and there that may have the belief in the identity claim, but does not make it a priority and would, in essence, put that underneath the gospel message and not proselytizing people into their belief system. You can disagree with those people and they would say, hey, that's cool, whatever, and they're not going out actively trying to proselytize people into the identity doctrine. But the issue seems to be that the vast majority of proponents of Hebrew Israelism are making it a priority. They do emphasize it more than the gospel message if they believe in the New Testament. And if they're Tanakh only, that they're rejecting the core message of the scriptures. So my thing is that I don't believe that a person making a claim to ethnicity in and of itself is a salvation issue. Rather, is that person making the ethnicity claim a priority over the gospel message?
That's the point.
And
that's key. I'm sorry, brother. Go ahead.
There was just one more thing I wanted to add. But for those who are making it a priority, is it not odd that all the verses that they claim are somehow indicative of this idea of an identity claim, when you read them in context, aren't actually talking about an identity claim at all? For example, the appeal to the Valley of the Dry Bones in Ezekiel 37. Israel was dead because they were dead in sin. It had nothing to do with them forgetting who they were. Some of them will make an appeal to Deuteronomy 32:26, but won't read verse 27 to get the context. Again, it is an identity that's in view. It's Israel being destroyed, yet God said he would not utterly destroy them lest their enemies would say God didn't do this. But in the King James reading, they see remembrance and they think they're going to forget who they are. But that's not what that's talking about in verse 26. In the New Testament, how many times do we see the apostles or Christ, the apostles, or anyone going up to people and saying, "What is thy nationality?" or "Do you know who you are?" That's never emphasized in the New Testament. How is it that we read the New Testament and we don't see that language being employed anywhere? In fact, Paul does the complete opposite in Philippians chapter 3, verses 1 through 9. What did he consider everything, whether it was being circumcised on the 8th day, all that, even being, according to the law, perfect? He considered all that dung in comparison to the knowledge of Christ.
Amen.
That's all I got to say.
Amen.
Amen. I've yet to have a Hebrew come to me and talk to me about Jesus. Never. I have yet to have them come to me and let that be the gateway to the conversation. Let's talk about the good Lord Jesus.
You forgot when they bring up Revelation 2:9 and 3:9. That's the only time they like to talk about Jesus. Jesus, for the Hebrew Israelites, in a lot of ways, to be frank with you, he's a prop in their argument.
100%.
Yeah, that's kind of all he is. He's not a master to be obeyed. He's not. I mean, one time Adam said that Jesus is simply Django in the sky. That's about right. There's not really a whole lot more there to it.
But yeah, I probably need to clarify what I meant by that. I stand by it. Don't get me wrong.
That's self-explanatory.
I'm not backtracking. I just want to be explicit. You know what I'm saying? So what I mean by that is I do think that you have a large number of individuals who have angst and anger and so forth about the predicament of African Americans and minorities in general here in the West, and so their get back is to basically make, I'm thinking about, these groups who believe that Jesus is going to come back and slaughter a bunch of white people. They're going to have, slaves, all that kind of stuff. That's what I'm saying. They believe Jesus like they're Django in the sky. You know what I'm saying? Like they're basically using God as a vehicle for, or somewhere to kind of place their vengeful sentiments. You know what I'm saying? Which is, I talked about that actually in a video when that shooting.
And if I could piggyback on that, for many Hebrews, once again, many, not all. You hear me, right?
At all.
For a lot of them, I say to them that the only issue you have with white supremacy is the white part.
Yeah.
That's the only problem you have, because you want supremacy, right? Slavery isn't evil. It's who's doing the enslaving is evil, right? It's not oppression itself that's bad. It's the people doing the oppressing that's bad. So for many Hebrews, you don't stand on any moral high ground whatsoever, because you want exactly what the oppressor has, quote unquote.
Right.
So again, you're still playing within the paradigm of white supremacy. You're still in a box of crayons. We want you to get out the box.
Right.
Some of them go as far as to use that as like something to be looked forward to in the new heavens and the new earth. That's what you should look forward to, the fact that you will be served by Europeans.
Amen. Ethnocentrism is a hermeneutic for many. When we talk about hermeneutics, we talk about the art and science of studying scripture. When and it's a famous prosperity teacher, and he says, everywhere I look in the Bible, I see money. And I'll never forget that statement. Like, first off, it's the dumbest statement on the planet and one of the most heretical statements. But basically, he says, everywhere I go in the Bible, I can pretty much track my way to money. Like, means he has a hermeneutic of greed, right? He uses that as his pictorial of how he looks at scripture. Like when you talk to most of our friends, and listen, we say this out of love because we believe in the law of Christ, the law of love and the law of liberty. We're doing this out of love. Like, I'm not really into the arguing. I'm not really into the debating, but I think it's necessary for dealing with some of the issues. So we say this out of love. And so I think that we're just trying, what we're trying to, I'm saying help you with, is that we believe that the effects of sin and it's funneling through the practical workings of white supremacy and Western slavery and Christendom has done such a job on the psychosis of Black folk, Black and brown folk, that this is on our end, Christians. We now have to say, if this is a major issue that people of African descent, if we want to say that, is dealing with, we have to apply the gospel to that. We can't just tell people their identity is found in Christ. You can't do that. You have to, because that's what Western white evangelicalism does in order to utilize it as a way of running from dealing with the practical decimation of Black bodies, right? And the psychological effects of slavery. It blows my mind that if somebody got raped today, one of the first things we'd say, go to the hospital, make sure they get looked at, make sure we get DNA evidence, and then we would make sure that they got counseling to deal with the trauma of what they dealt with. Millions of Black people got let out of slavery with no economic system, with no counseling. I don't even know if counseling was started at that time anyway, but with literally nothing. And you expect us to be able to just be psychologically, spiritually, socially, and economically okay for generations without anything fixing that. And so when we talk about doing urban apologetics for us focuses on helping African Americans through not African Americans, people of in the urban context, but not just African Americans, but particularly ethnic minorities, to show them that the gospel is not merely for and from Europe and to Europe, but it's a global religion. I wish I had his book down here, because Bantu, in his new book, I started reading. I'm reading so many things at the different things at the same time. I got to finish some stuff, but he's helping us to work through that. We really have a lot of work to do in helping African Americans to really understand that just because it's not FUBU, for us by us, doesn't mean it's not for us. And so again, that's a huge thing when we talk about what we're doing in engaging people in urban apologetics. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Co-sign that, man. I mean, you really laid it out, but I mean, I think just to kind of emphasize, like, we don't have some sort of hateful agenda where we just like, we hate Hebrew Israelites, and I mean, it's just,
absolutely,
all the silly stuff that people say, man.
Absolutely.
I mean, to be honest with you, like, I love everybody in the body of Christ, you know what I'm saying? But the reason why I do what I do is because I'm from this context. I'm exposed to these kinds of concerns all the time. I know what it's like to be a Black man in America, I'm saying, and have to deal with the internal struggle of mustering some sort of self-esteem in the face of a society that says you're only good to play basketball, football, be some sort of entertainer. You know what I'm saying? You can't be an intellectual. I know what that's like. You know what I'm saying? I know what that's like. And so therefore, for me, as I look into the scriptures, as God's revealed his word and so forth, you know what I'm saying, God has helped me work through it. So why wouldn't I want to then go back to other folks like, yo, this is what I found. Look what the word has to say about this. Look what how the biblical worldview addresses this issue that we've been dealing with. And to your point, absolutely, bro, you wrote a whole book against white supremacy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I got stuff on my channel right now. People can go check it out where I'm talking about white supremacy and naming Christians by name, Christian pastors by name, white Christian pastors, while I'm contending against the erroneous ideas, you know what I'm saying, that are still flying around today. I do it all the time.
Adam, true or false? You and I have talked about white supremacy and what we can do to combat it on the phone. Alfredo, true or false? You and I have talked about white supremacy.
All the time. All the time, bro. All the time.
Yeah.
It's like it's part and parcel of urban apologetics, because I think it's multifaceted for us. It's not only dealing with the things that are going on outside of the church, but we're also concerned about the things that are going on both inside the church institutionally and inside the individual psychologically and spiritually. And so we can't be urban apologists without treating the whole person, And white supremacy is a reality that we face. But I think the difference between us and a lot of these other groups is that we know white supremacy is real. We see the Black bodies and brown bodies disproportionately in prison. We see all of these realities, but we don't take that and formulate a hatred against white people because of it. And so there's a disconnect in the minds of people. Well, how can you be against white supremacists and not against white people at the same time? Because this is spiritual.
Hey, I'm gonna be real explicit right now. And this goes, and I'm not trying to be funny. You know what I'm saying? I'm just keeping it.
Let me go after you when you're done, brother, because I got something. Oh, man.
To make this point right now, and when I say I'm being real, I'm being dead serious. I'm gonna tell you, I mean, a perfect example of why I know, folks on this panel is not embracing white supremacy. If I was out here pushing white supremacy, I'm telling you right now, I would have 100,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel already. I'm telling you that right now.
How about this?
It's because I deal with white supremacy. You can go to my channel right now, and I'm not just saying this as a shameless plug. I'm really saying if you go to listen to like the social justice series that I did, which I'm going to get back to, and listen to something I'm talking about there, like I got people that will unsubscribe to my channel. Matter of fact, Nefer Nitty, I didn't even tell you this. Some people unsubscribe to my channel because of the interview where we talking about being woke.
Wow.
It happens all the time.
Wow.
It happens all the time. So that's my point. Like y'all just coming at us and y'all pushing white supremacy. Fam, if I was doing that, man, I'd have been blown up.
Listen, I wrote
You know
this.
something,
I
though?
wrote this. I wrote this. They were happy.
Mhm.
Now
I
check
wrote
this
it
out.
down.
Bring it out, Pastor. Bring it out.
I wrote this. They were happy. This is a book on on how sanctification works. I wrote this.
All of a sudden, he's
And listen,
racist.
listen. I had a guy that's supposed to be my friend that asked another friend of mine, "Has Eric left the faith?"
Wow. Wow.
Wow.
Wow.
It's crazy.
And y'all want to know something? You know what's crazy? Hebrew Israelites, not all, but there are certainly a large chunk that actually advocate for white supremacist literature. That Esau Edom book, that's from British history.
Yeah.
Identity.
Yeah.
And not all of them do that, because there are some on the moderate side who have actually opposed other Hebrew Israelites using those books. Okay. And one of them is actually in the live chat. I have a huge disagreement with him. I don't rock with the dude. I think Alfredo knows who I'm talking about, but even he came out and spoke out against it. So I'll give him credit for that, where credit's due. But needless to say, they'll promote beliefs, though, overall, that have a basis in white supremacy, because, as y'all well know, African Americans experience a lot of racial stereotype in this country. Y'all know in cartoon and media and all that, especially as it pertains to Africa, the continent of Africa, the depiction of the African in media. Y'all already know them old cartoons. Y'all see them old cartoons that they had back in like the 40s, 50s, and 60s, how they depicted Africans with bones in their noses and that kind of thing. You know what's crazy? A lot of Hebrew Israelites on the campsite will use white supremacist propaganda against Africans when trying to proselytize people into their beliefs to say, oh, we're not really Africans.
Wow.
Talk about it.
Yes, talk
Wow.
about.
Wow.
I'm sorry, but that really gets me, because it's such a contradiction. Like they disrespect the people that we know to be our ancestors in order to assimilate or appropriate some other people's ancestors. Like, how you gonna spit on the name of our ancestors? Oh, they were dumb, they were ignorant, all they knew was Christianity, they didn't know any better. Oh, those ain't our true people, they the ones that sold us out. Like, what? How do you do that, and how do you reconcile that and still claim to be true to your identity? It's kind of like, to me, you know, Dwayne Wade's son is now his daughter, right? And people of that vein of thought, they will say, be true to yourself, while at the same time telling you that their gender is something other than what they were born with. They're gonna tell you to be true to yourself. That's how these Hebrews sound, telling you to be true to your identity, but they're not African. It makes no sense.
Right.
And
Right.
often, you know, they I don't think they're aware of how much they emulate white supremacy. Some, not all. And one of the ways they emulate is by attacking the women of that particular community, right? And since we're talking about urban apologetics, right, we're talking about that in the Black community, the woman is extremely valuable and important for the community to exist. So the last thing you should be doing within your community is attacking the Black woman.
Right.
And we've seen that happen recently. You know,
Yeah,
you can't be pro-Black and then attack the Black woman. Not to say that the Black woman can't be corrected. I'm not saying that. But to be slanderous and to throw mud at the Black woman and then say you're pro-Black, you're being hypocritical. And it's very disrespectful. I felt it resonated with me when I saw that happen, you know, and we can't have dialogue if you're going to start disrespecting women. Like, we have to draw a line somewhere.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, now I don't know. I'm just speaking for me. I mean, I'm not speaking for anybody else at this point. I'm just saying, for me, where I come from, you know what I'm saying, if you're a man and you're disrespecting females, like calling them out, from where I'm from, like, I can't consider you to be a man at that point. Like, you're a boy at that point. I'm just being real. I'm just, and this goes back to my point about how you can't build. Now, Grant, I don't want to put this on the entire Hebrew Israelite community. That being said, the incident that occurred that BK is talking about, that's not the only incident where we see these gross, just mistreatments. I'm saying of Black women. I'm saying in that community. That's just the reality of it. Let's just keep it real. So my whole point is you can't build a community on that, dog. Come on, man. Like, if that's the kind of man who you pushing, I don't want no parts of it. If you're not gonna check that, you know what I'm saying, then I can't rock with you. It's that simple. We're not on equal playing field here.
Two points to that. One, there's so many men that he could have gone after. Keep the conversation between men. When I've come across Hebrew Israelites in the street in my day-to-day life, a lot of times they don't want to talk to me, even though I'm an apologist, because they don't in their doctrine, they don't dialogue with women that way. So why online are you picking on me? And then secondly, I forgot what the second point was, but we could just ride with it. Oh, secondly, I had people asking me if I would be interested in having a moderated debate with the dude. And it's like, how am I going to have a civilized discussion with you and you out here calling me a hood rat? Like, where they do that at? Not where I'm from. We don't do that, baby.
Yeah. What would y'all say are some key resources that for Christians? I'm talking for Christians. Oh no.
No, I was just gonna
screen.
I
was like, oh no.
Yeah, that's funny.
Everything's okay. I'm just gonna screen share something here. At least I'm trying to. About
Vocab, is that Oct 2?
Right now, man.
That's Oct 2. That's Oct 2, bro.
Yeah, nice. I think it is. You guys are smarter than me. My geography is really good. I'm trying to show.
So real quick before you do, well, go ahead, because I want to I'm gonna ask a bigger question. Go ahead, brother.
All right, I'm just gonna show. So what you guys are just talking about, right? I just wanted to show just a few. I'm not gonna play a video or anything, but I wanted to, I think it's important to briefly show this right here. So imagine I hope it shows up. All right, imagine. Okay, is it not showing it yet? Is it still not showing it?
Yeah, it's showing it. But it's showing YouTube. It's showing YouTube.
Oh, okay, perfect. So look what I put in the search bar. Do you guys see what I put in the search bar?
Christian church, loudmouth black woman.
Okay, so watch this. Who's the second video by? Who's the next? Who's the next video by?
Wow.
Who's the next video by?
Wow.
That's by CNN.
Wow.
Kev on stage. Okay, so here, look, there, IUIC.
Wow.
See that? You see that one?
Wow.
All right, go on another IUIC video. You see, look at that one. Look at the title. Okay, look at this one. Okay, I mean, how long do we want to do this?
Wow.
How long do we want to do this?
Wow.
And again, I mean, how long do we want to do this? Notice again, I mean, are you guys seeing all these?
Yeah.
Again, look at this. Check out this cover image. And again, oh, there's Tazariak. Of course, Tazariak. Yeah, there he is. So if you ever,
that's a popular catchphrase, huh? Loud black woman.
Yeah, I knew exactly what to type. I'm not searching for a specific video. I'm searching for a phrase on YouTube, and it goes on and on and on and on. That's why some of the one Westers say things like, "The black woman is Esau's top general." They say stuff like that.
Wow.
What GMS? Now it's just GMS, but it's still a camp, and they still exist, and they're still everywhere. GMS says, in the future, we might just kill y'all because since it's through the father's line, we don't need you guys anyway. We could propagate the race with these non-Israelite women.
Wow.
Abu knows exactly what I'm talking about. He's in the live chat. He can confirm what I'm saying. But go ahead, Pastor. I just want to make sure that was out there.
No,
so
I'm still feeling the shock waves.
Wow. That's
good
wild.
God Almighty. Yeah. Well,
And
what are y'all?
Oh,
go ahead, Adam. Go ahead.
I was going to one of your points that you brought up earlier about the effects of slavery. You know what I'm saying? And I think sometimes, people mischaracterize. But anyway, I'll just say that when you think about, the black family in America today, And it's not just slavery. Like, people have to understand that when you think about the protracted, you know, like you're talking about Jim Crow, you're talking about a whole slew of things since slavery. It's not just slavery. I'm saying, but the Black community has been under duress for a long time, and it's hard to build relationships. It's hard to build families and marriages and so forth when you're constantly under duress. You see what I'm saying? That's I'm talking. I'm a mental health worker. I work in the mental health field. I'm keeping it 100 right now. Like, it's real. You know what I'm saying? And so when I see stuff like that, to me, I see expressions of that oppression being regurgitated out of the mouths of Hebrew Israelites in that community. I'm saying, like, now they've internalized the effects of that oppression and they're venting it toward, you know, our Black women, which we need to cherish. I mean, we eating ourselves alive, man. I'm saying that's white supremacy right there.
Facts.
That's what it looks like when you digest it and then incorporate it into your character. That's what white supremacy looks like.
Facts.
Yeah. What would y'all say are, like, your core kind of, well, it can be whatever kind of resource you want to point to. What are your top 3 kind of, and this is Christians, I'm pretty sure they want to know, what are some resources? Everybody already kind of laid out their channels and different things. And I send people to all of y'all all the time. I'm just meeting the brother George. Hopefully want to get to know him more and just see the Lord continue to strengthen and use him in the body. What are some resources that you all recommend for Christians who are just wanting to grow in their ability to learn the faith, defend the faith, and develop their repertoire as it pertains to, because every Christian on some level is supposed to be an apologist. I mean, because apologetics is really under the umbrella of evangelism. It's just when apologetics is this: when you are trying to share the faith and you come upon apprehensions or challenges to the faith, you're defending it in order to plant water so that God can add the growth. 1 Corinthians chapter 3 verse 6. So what would you say are some of your core resources that have helped you and developed you as an urban apologist?
The Bible.
Hey, to the doggone man.
And I mean that in all sincerity. Just coming from a point where a lot of times the consensus among people, or the sentiment among people, is that we shouldn't be having this conversation, that we shouldn't be focused on issues that relate specifically to race in any sort of way. I bought into that, and I thought that, you know, people told me that it was un-Christ-like, that we should focus on Christian behavior, but not things of race, because it's uncomfortable for them. But they project that upon the scripture. And so I went to the scriptures and I pulled out all of the verses having to do with oppression, poverty. He talks about being a voice for the voiceless, all the verses that have to do with fatherlessness, which we have in our community, as everyone knows, immigration and how to treat immigrants and foreigners within our borders. And I was able to, by using the scripture, build a picture and understanding of who God is and the way that he feels about these topics. And that affirmed me in the passions that he's placed within me. So my number one resource is the Holy Spirit and the word of God. That's my number one. So y'all can go ahead.
Amen.
Amen, my
Yeah.
sister.
I would just go ahead and echo that too. Now, Vocab's probably gonna joke with me for this because he knows how much I love like philosophy and stuff like that, you know. So whereas, you know, I dig into like a lot of philosophy books, but when I think about my own journey as an apologist, and I'm not saying everybody has to be this way, when I think back on it, I see that, because I come out of the Word of Faith movement, you know what I'm saying? And by God's grace, he brought me out of that, you know what I'm saying? And so when I look back, I see that God began to, by his grace, correct my doctrine before I started getting into, you know, so-called apologetics and all the philosophical stuff. And so I agree that, you know, the scriptures has to be, you know, primary. And I would encourage people to get some good commentaries, man. You know what I'm saying? Particularly in regard to with the Hebrew Israelites, get a good commentary on the book of Galatians. Get a good commentary on the book of Hebrews, the book of Philemon, you know what I'm saying? Where it you know, Paul and the authors of the other books are getting into, you know, Judaizing and all that kind of stuff and understanding. There you go right there. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, getting in some good comments. And the reason why I refer to commentary is because you don't have to do all the legwork yourself. You know what I'm saying? As you get into the scriptures, there are resources out there to help you understand the scriptures. You know what I'm saying? So you can get a better understanding of what this word means or what that word means and context and so on and so forth. So I really encourage people, honestly, before you really get into, some of this other stuff, get into that word, get into some commentaries, man, and really get rooted, and then from there, you can take it a step further with some of the other apologetics materials, in my opinion.
For me, I would, as an introductory book, I think How to Read the Bible for All It's Worth by Gordon D. Fee is a really great book because it really just lays out and maps out what the Bible is, the different genres, the different literary types, so that you have a better contextual understanding of the scriptures. And I think you need that first before you venture into the wide world of commentaries. You definitely want to do that eventually, but you really want to know your Bible for yourself first. Understand the proper context, the times and the places and the dates and the cultures of the text that you're reading. And then what you want to do is look at my video I did with the good Dr. Eric Mason about apologetic resources that you can find in my channel, BK Apologist, YouTube.
There you go.
Good plug. Good plug.
Thank you.
I mean, Tactics by Greg Kokel to me is an essential apologetic reading because it shows you how to engage in conversation and how to ask questions, and that's very important for dialogue. And then a whole slew of writings by John Frame. So basically, just everything he writes I find helpful, and I just want to shout out to that. And then the guys who help us understand the relationship between the testaments are very helpful. So I know I'm more giving categories. So Beal and Carson have an edited book called Commentary on the New Testament use of the Old Testament, and that's an example. And a book called Kingdom Through Covenant does a similar thing. It shows the relationship between the testaments and therefore the relationship with the covenants. It's very important. It's very important for Christians to understand, period. That's really the essence of the book of Hebrews. And the big question that Christians have always been asking, you can go back all the way, is where's their continuity and where's their discontinuity? Where are those two things? And it's very important to understand. I'm not saying I have it mastered or mapped out. That's why those books are helpful, to really understand. They grow your faith because you see the foreshadowing and what the Lord was doing is beautiful. And then it's helpful when you talk to Hebrew Israelites. So understanding the relationship between the nature of the covenants is helpful. And so writings that are good on that tend to have been very helpful. I just got one about the theme of mystery in scripture by G.K. Bill. Is one of the most amazing books I've ever read. And he just traces so many shadows. So anyways, some of those, to me, those relate some of what you guys are talking about with biblical interpretation, but those would be some I would recommend.
Yeah. Can I go ahead and go?
Yeah.
So I would say that first and foremost, as the sister pointed out, it's obviously being grounded in the scriptures and being led by the Holy Spirit. But aside from that, also having a good grasp of context, history, the languages of the scripture, underneath the translation. And you don't have to be an expert in any of those areas, but having at least a foundation in place where you can grapple with some of the issues would be instrumental, especially when dealing with the vast majority of proponents of Hebrew Israelism, because many of them are not, for lack of better words, well engaged in those areas, right? There are some in that community who attempt to, and Vocab knows who I'm talking about firsthand, and yet even they aren't exactly what we would call sound in their methodology. But overall, I think that for brothers and sisters in the Lord, having a good rock solid foundation in the scriptures, reading your Bible, understanding the context, understanding timelines, et cetera, that's helpful, right? If you're going to deal with people who are pulling things out of context, right? But other than that, I think all of you have said, pretty much what I was going to say. Yeah, so that's pretty much it on my end.
Yeah, I just want to say too, you probably won't say it yourself, but woke church. Read woke church, you know what I'm saying? And I'm not being funny, but the reality is, by Dr. Eric Mason. And the reason why I say that is, and actually Nefer Nitty alluded to it earlier, one aspect of urban apologetics specifically, I think, is providing individuals with a moral framework in terms of how to navigate white supremacy. You know what I'm saying? How do you do it in a biblical way? So, if I become a Christian, do I have to be a coon now? I'm saying, do I have to, or am I going to be like a Christian Malcolm X? I mean, these are real questions that people have. Maybe their response to the gospel, they don't know what to do after that with this angst and really right apprehension to white supremacy and oppression. You see what I'm saying? So if so I think as urban apologists, one aspect of what we do is help people navigate those kind of questions. And I think that woke church, I mean, maybe you probably wouldn't have brought it out yourself, but I would certainly commend that to y'all as a great work, you know what I'm saying, in that regard.
I think everything they said is really, really good. And I think with what they're saying, with understanding basic Bible study methods or hermeneutics, I would recommend, I have them at my office. I think you need to get a good systematic theology, whether it be, and I like both for different reasons. My two favorite accessible systematic theologies is Wayne Grudem's systematic theology, which deals with a lot of different subject matters. But I like Moody Handbook of Theology actually better because it's even though those are two different hermeneutics, one is more dispensational, the other one's more covenant theology, covenant kind of covenant charismatic kind of theology. That's Wayne Grudem. He's going to be way more detailed. Moody Handbook Theology and actually even Charles Rowry's basic theology are very, very good for basic terms on who God is, Christology, just basic systematic theology. From there, as you're learning Bible study methods, learning hermeneutics, one of the things that I would, these are the books that I feel like several of them I'm reading now, but one I'm using as a reference, that I use as a reference book a lot for my biblical theology of ethnic anthropology and scripture. First off, this is one of the best books I've ever read in my life. Free at Last by Carl Ellis was written, in 3 years will be 40 years ago. And this book, the urban apologetics community has reawakened this book again and put it back to the now. They're putting out a revised edition and finally doing a Kindle edition. Like, I cried my way through parts of this book just because you don't have the code switch as you're reading this book. You're hearing anthropological theology in your language without having the code switch as an ethnic minority. So that this is, I mean, literally, I got so many highlights in this book, it doesn't make sense. I'm working my way through this. This book is unfreaking real. This is Bantu's newest book. Like I'm in the first chapter. I'm like this dude is killing in this book so far. But I think this needs to be reading for everybody. Everybody needs to read this.
Read the title, Pastor. They can't see it that good.
Okay, I'm sorry. I put it in the chat too, both chats, but it's called A Multitude of Peoples Engaging Ancient Christianity's Global Identity. I mean, and for what we've been talking about tonight, this is a key resource because it talks biblically and historically about biblical anthropology symphonically, like Ploythorus, who used to teach at Westminster, talks about a philosophy called symphonic theology. It's when you cause the systematic theologies to actually interact with each other. So, like having a soteriological ecclesiology, a soteriological eschatology, eschatological ecclesiology, and those systematic theologies interacting with each other versus being in each other. And I think this book so far is doing a great job. And I think it needs to be foundational reading. A book I haven't read the whole thing, but I use as a reference work in this entire series. Any of these you pick up are monster, but this really talks about from every people and nation. It's a biblical theology of race. It's by one of my favorite, this white guy, I met him and I hugged him and kissed him because I was like, bro, he has an article talking about racism in the academy from the mid-90s. I'm gonna ask him, can I make it available? But his stuff on race is ridiculous. I also have his book on Message to the Prophets. but which is a reference work. But this book here, I want to focus on this one. This book here as a reference work really helps you to see when we talk about biblical theology, it's basically letting the Bible tell you about different subject matters as it unfolds throughout the biblical story. That's biblical theology. And so this whole series is just freaking nasty, like just nasty for no reason. But I've referenced this. You see, I'm using a tissue for this one to mark something off in there. But this book is something that I think is a core book. A newer book that I'm reading right now in my devotional life, like I would have said like last year, a whole different stack of books. But this one is another one. What my assistant put me onto this joint. Listen here, people of God. This joint here is fire. Like I'm reading this joint now. Like he basically does a biblical theology of the law of Christ and talks about its relationship to the law. Like I got several things on it. Like I think Vocab mentioned continuity, discontinuity, where the dispensationalists and the covenant guys get together and kind of talk about the way their hermeneutics work and relate to the story of the Bible. This joint right here, listen, is nuts. Look how I've already started highlighting this joint. I mean, I highlighted this whole thing. Listen to this real quick. He said, Paul describes the Christian standard of conduct as the law of Christ. He makes it clear that the law of Christ is not the law of Moses. That's, of course, 1 Corinthians chapter 9. The law of Moses was given directly by God in an awesome display of glory on Sinai. The wisdom and equity of the statutes set the nation of Israel high above the other nations. But over 800 years after the old covenant of Mount Sinai, God promised to one day establish a new covenant with the house of Israel, with the house of Judah. Then he goes on to start talking. It's just nastiness. I mean, the way it acts. So that one right there. Now, this is what I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna stop talking. I gotta get ready to go because I gotta do something for my wife. But one of the things from a practical perspective, we have a book coming out next year. It's in editing phase now on urban apologetics. It's the first of its kind coming through Zondervan. I haven't even really announced it publicly. I don't even know if I'm supposed to do it. But I know, right? But one of my sons in the ministry did a chapter on urban apologetics as outreach, because he's a beast at it. And one of the things that doesn't get talked about is incarnational ministry and its role in urban apologetics. When we talk about incarnational ministry is the life-on-life contact with meeting the needs of actual people. We take the doctrine of incarnation is a book written by Athanasius called On the Incarnation. Actually, Darrell Guder wrote a book Darrell Guder is another symphonic theologian that I love. He wrote on the incarnation. Great, very, very small reads. I read them. And one of the things when you look at incarnational ministry, it's utilizing Jesus Christ coming from heaven to earth, taking on an additional nature, natures unmixed in one person, united forever. That's called the hypostatic union, Philippians 2. So that philosophy or theology of him coming from heaven to earth, we call that, we get our doctrine of incarnational ministry. It says, in the beginning, the word was with God, and the word was God. Then in verse 14, it says, and the word became flesh and skeneoed, pitched a tent among us, and we beheld his glory, glory as the only begotten of the Father, full of faith and grace and truth. That theology influenced my church to flesh out that incarnational theology in the hood. We've planted 44 churches on purpose. Right now, we're in the midst of buying a school, an entire 133,000 square foot school. I hope, don't share this part, but yeah. I don't know. Anyway, so we're in the midst of buying it. And this is what we're working on as our urban apologetics. We're working on a school. We want 50% of the teachers at the school to be Black men. That's our goal. 50% of the men at school. We're working on a daycare center for single moms to be able to be affordable for them, because 90% of the families in our community are single parent homes. So we want to minister to those single moms. Not only that, we're not bragging. We're just talking about what we dream about that's beyond just getting online, arguing with people, right? We're doing a technology center. There's going to be several levels of technology, because I think this part is important, what we're doing online, but I think we also got to take it into actual life in communities through local churches. And so we're doing a technology center that's going to have several things. It's going to have a music studio, a media studio, and a computer lab. And through that, we're using this as common ground based on Colossians 4 verses 2 through 6 to share the gospel with people. We're also going to have a business shared space where people who want to start businesses can come and can share and get information and office out of there. But then last but not least, and I'm done. Last but not least, another thing that we're doing is we're starting a beauty supply store. In order to fund the ministries, because them Jones make a lot of money. So we want to invest that back into all of those different initiatives. These are just some of the beginnings of the things that we've done outside of our basketball league, working with schools and all those different things. And so one of the things I want to encourage you, as I have to sign off, y'all can keep going, but I have to sign off, is I think we need to read. I think we need to study, but I also think we need to show and proclaim the gospel in very, very practical ways in our communities. 3 levels of outreach that you can do. These are 3 levels of outreach, practical. I call it blitzes, connections, and city investment. Blitzes is just hitting your community real fast and doing things in order to build common ground and relationship with them. Connection is when you sit down with your community, like Jesus Christ at Matthew's table and in Simeon's house, where he sat down and engaged people. But then you got city investment, which we are in what's called the city investment phase of our church, where we're trying to develop long-term ministries and institutions in this community in order to have long-term gospel impact and common ground so that we can earn the right to share Jesus with people. So that's kind of all I wanted to say really, really quickly. We're going to develop other things, and we'll be talking about that later. And I'm everybody here that I know of is very, very involved in their local church. They're not just online; they're also in their local church. Even though, and I think online is important. Nefer did a chapter on doing ministry online. I'm giving stuff away, but I'm just telling you, it's going to be amazing. The chapter is going to be amazing. But I'm just letting y'all know, God is up to a whole bunch of stuff. I love each and every one of y'all. I have to go. Y'all can continue the live, and grace and peace.
Peace.
God bless, Pastor E.
God bless y'all.
Great.
All right, you guys want to do final words? Because I think we've went long
I
enough.
don't think George got an opportunity to share his resource.
I don't think he did. That's right. What you got to say, George? What you got? You're muted. There you go, bro.
Oh, no. I'm new to apologetics. So one resource I do rely on is like teachers that have been in the field for a long time. One of the reasons why I slowly started coming out of indoctrination was my beliefs started getting put to the test in debates.
All right.
So debates, debates are very important because, it's a way of, like it says in 1 John 4, try the spirits if they are God, because the next verse says, because there are many false prophets, so you notice a lot of the camps, they will never debate apologists. Ricard did it and we saw what happened. But
you mean this?
But one thing I did, there's like a pattern. The more, like, I was reading a book called The Kingdom of Cults, and the more that cults are exposed, and the more that the leaders are like vilified, and for all the right true reasons, they become bigger. They become more popular. So I'm like, we need to maybe just ignore them, so they don't.
Nah, it's a catch-22, man.
Mhm.
It's a catch-22. It's like, do you get back surgery or not?
Yeah, that's right.
At that certain stage, man. When I'm just,
Yeah, but that's for me. That was one of the main resources was when I started to listen to debates and the doctrines that I held to being put to the test and failing. And then there, you have to be at a position where are you being objective, or are you going to continue to follow your emotions, you know? And
Praise God. And now you're friends with people you used to hate, right?
that's right. Like, and the brother Faith there, you know, we were enemies at one time. This is no joke,
Wow.
you know.
Oh, yeah. The big talk for
uh,
you days, man.
Don't bring those things up. I cringe every time. Like we just did Just Jesus Ministries just did a little mini documentary on my transition, and I look back at my street preaching escapades, and I just like you know, like there's a gif where the guy's like in his car and he's like, you know, puts the seat,
Yeah.
you know,
Or Homer disappears into the bushes.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
me.
like that. What like that one where you was banging on that teenage girl for wearing the shorts?
Yeah,
He's going after her hard, bro. And you had that big beard back then, so you looked all kinds of fierce.
I'm 6 foot. I'm 6 foot. You know, and about I don't know how you guys about 220 pounds. You know, and here's a 12-year-old girl who probably weighs about 70 pounds, and I'm just. And then I got my brothers, and then we're Polynesian, so we're not the smallest people. You know what I mean? Samoans and Cook Islanders and whatever. But yeah, like I look back and I thank God, to be honest. It's just a blessing to come into the greater body of Christ, and it's been tough, but I'm definitely feeling the love, and I appreciate you guys having me on here. I am, and all the stuff you guys do, you're getting plenty of hate. I just saw Nefer Nitty's breakdown of that Dante, what's his name?
400 years 14.
400 year Fortune. Yep, yeah, I remember. That's how I know him. And I was able, and what I did, because you did such a great job, and there's some women obviously who came out of the cult too, and women in these groups, they're not really, well, GOCC, they didn't disrespect women to a degree, but they had a certain role to deal with apologetics like you do would be frowned upon. Do you know what I mean? But I was able to share it with one of the sisters, and what you're doing really motivated her, and just keep it's awesome. It's like what's that story with the in the book of Judges where God used the woman to stab
Deborah and Barak? Yeah. It's like, hey, all right, I'll go out with you, but a woman's gonna get glory. Next thing you know, hammer time.
I don't apply that story to my situation because I'm surrounded by men who own their job. So
that's pretty much what discernment is key as well. Look for men that look for men and women, that have your best interest by trying to educate you, trying to make you understand the Bible, and also look for people who actually can speak Greek and Hebrew, and not Lashawan Kodash. Anybody starting off a video says Hebrew in the pews, and then the first word they say is Shalom. Please just know that it's a parody video. But they're not really trying to be fired.
Well, in all seriousness, if there's Hebrews in those pews, Hebrew Israelites, all they got to do is just translate them. That's all they got to do is just translate them, because that's a big issue. Well, I think this is good. I know a number of us are going to be Cyber City, which is a 2-day thing over the next day. Adam on Black Atheism, Alfredo on the Conscious Community, Nefer Nitty on Syncretism, and I know you guys hope to be hanging out. So check back, because you're going to see these folks present some powerful lessons.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else got final words? Faithful?
Yeah, I got some final words.
Alfredo, and then, all right, go ahead.
Now, I'm going to purposely lump all Hebrews with this one. I'm going to purposely lump all of them. Ready? I got love for all y'all. I have love. And I do. We be having these little chats in the back. You see me do videos with Hebrews. You know what I mean? I got love for y'all. You know what I mean? And it's because of that love that I have for you that I want to help you to understand Christ. So that you can really be with the Most High. So that's my intent, and that's my heart. So never feel like I'm trying to strip you or depower you. It's the complete opposite. I want to empower you with God's spirit so that you could be redeemed, so you could be part of our family. We want you to be with us. We love you. We want you to be part of the family. So
That's good. That's good.
Amen to that.
Amen.
Amen to
Amen.
that. And, I want to piggyback on it and just kind of say something to not only to Hebrew Israelites, but to Christians who might be watching as well. I think this whole discussion has been very important. It's been long overdue, but I think it's just the beginning. I think more conversations like this need to happen, and I say that specifically because I think there needs to be clarity in terms of doctrine, what people affirm in terms of what the Bible teaches. And I think people need to, we need to highlight, where people really are, because there's a lot of muddying of the waters nowadays. And so for me, and I think the BK Apologist probably exemplifies this, better than myself for certain, you know what I'm saying? But when we're dealing with Hebrew Israelites, we want to be diplomatic, you know what I'm saying, as much as possible, you know what I'm saying? And there's context to that, you know what I'm saying? But, let's just be real, you know what I'm saying? This is not, I'm just being honest, like, this is not like, apologetics in the European context. You know what I'm saying this is urban apologetics, and so there's going to have a little bit different flavor to it. That's all well and good. You know what I'm saying it's different. And that's
a little bit
fine.
of sauce. It's a little bit of sauce.
Yeah, there's gonna be some hot sauce. I mean, that's what it
Flavor in
is.
that thing.
Yeah, and that's completely fine. This is soul food right here. This is soul food apologetics. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we got some ingredients in here, some spices. But anyway, so my point is, it's going to be different, but at the same time, generally speaking, we are diplomatic. We want you guys to know the true gospel, come to Christ, and join us as the people of God. I'm saying, but I think that what we have to be careful is that we don't confuse being diplomatic, I'm saying, with Hebrew Israelites with being ecumenical. Ecumenical would be more like, where you've got two people who affirm the core doctrines of Christianity and are in right standings from a gospel Bible standpoint and disagree maybe on like some secondary or tertiary issues, I'm saying, and they're reaching across the aisle, maybe between denominations or just from different theological perspectives and reconciling some things. That's being ecumenical more so, okay? But so when we're dealing with Hebrew Israelites, people can say, anybody on the panel can take a different perspective. I'm just speaking for me. I'm not being ecumenical. I'm saying I'm being diplomatic. And I think that we have to, and I say that because as much as I want to be, kind and exemplify Christ, at the same time, we have to stand on our square and make sure people are clear when it comes to biblical, the biblical worldview, which I use synonymously with Christianity, and Hebrew Israelism, which takes elements of the Bible and corrupts it in the ways that we've described to service, people's ethnic itch or some sort of, theology that's off base that ultimately reduces God, to something less than what the Bible depicts him as. And that's what we're against, I'm saying? So we can't muddy the waters between, the two groups. It's just that simple, I'm saying? And we need to be clear about that as much as we can be loving. And I think that moving forward, I said that to say, I think that we need to have discussions where we talk about, where we go point by point and discuss the core doctrines of the gospel, the core doctrines of Christianity. I'm thinking of things like the divinity of Christ, high Christology, Trinitarian doctrine and things of those nature, of that nature. We need to go point by point and really lay out for the urban apologetics community what it is that this orthodoxy that we're standing on. And then they can then say, okay, well, this is not what XYZ moderate is teaching. Or is this person who's claiming to be a Christian is kind of weird or whatever. I'm saying they can clearly see through the mirror of scripture where people stand. And I would like to see, more discussions like this occur so that we can really, lay that before the people.
That's good. That's good, man. We guys.
I just wanted to reiterate some things or point out some things, highlight some things that George said that he learned from debates and discussions like this. But I think that what separates him from a lot of people, just hearing what he just said, is that he was genuinely seeking the truth, and he was able to acknowledge whatever flaws in his doctrine were there. You have to be submissive to the Holy Spirit in order for that to happen, Right. So God has said in his word that he's going to be calling people out of darkness, right? But in order for you to be called out of darkness, there's a certain level of your ego that you have to be able to let go of, to recognize that something that you believe is wrong. And it was just very encouraging, Brother George, hearing you say that, because so many people on both sides are against online apologetics. They're against debates. They're against these types of discourses. Somehow they believe them to be unfruitful, but I believe that you're a product of the fact that this is God's work. And that people can indeed, their lives, that's why I said in the beginning, this is life and death. This is life and death. And one can cross over from darkness into light by watching some of the YouTube channels that are here presented. And I praise God for that. I praise God for that affirmation in your testimony. Just this past week, I struggled with that because I spent so many hours responding to this guy, and then people were just responding to me without watching the video or entertaining what I had to say. And that is what bothered me the most. That's what bothered me the most, the fact that they didn't see what I was presenting, and they had this animosity. You have people saying you should have brought better sources. Like, bruh, what sources? I only reviewed his. Like, obviously you weren't paying attention.
Yeah, that's
And
probably
I'm
my
not-
favorite comment is they're telling you to use better sources. All you did was actually read in context his own sources.
His own, so I
the
didn't even
sources are
assert
his
any
You
argument.
sources.
refuted him with his own sources.
I didn't even bring it exactly. All I did was review what he had to say. And my heart, once again, I'm not concerned about necessarily this beef that he has with me, but all of these, in my years of urban apologetics online, so many times people send me messages. I've been watching you for years. I've been in the back. They never liked a comment. They never shared a post. They never made a comment. They've never engaged, but they're there watching. That's the person that I'm concerned about. And it's you that I'm putting this information out so that you can see. But then when you just dismiss it without weighing the evidence, it's like, are you really seeking after the truth? And my burden is for these people. My burden is for people who are being deceived. So I want to thank you, Brother George, for being here and sharing that with everyone, so that Christians and apologists and whomever can continue to have faith that God can bring their family members out, and that we're not engaging in this work in vain.
Amen. Yeah.
Amen.
Amen. Real quick, I just wanted to add that what the sister Nefer said really resonated with me right now. A lot of times what we do, we think that it's not in the moment, we think it's not being effective, it's not working, but the Holy Spirit will use everything that we do for the glory's sake of God. And I truly and wholeheartedly believe that at the end of the day, we all know that it's not the intellectual argument in and of itself that convinces. It's only the Holy Spirit that convinces these people, or will convince these people. And Vocab, you and I both know that the ministry work that the Lord has used us for his glory's sake, has brought many people out of Hebrew Israelism and has assisted people who were already transitioning out. For example, Brother Jay, Marcus,
Kemuel.
Camuel.
Yeah.
He was formerly a Future Word of Israel. And not just them, the sister Latasha, who was a moderate Hebrew Israelite and was very much caught in the thick of things with the moderate side. She came out of it. There were many people.
I don't know if you ever met Jasmine, and also did you well, we probably can't name her, but there's even people who have left who are even related to camp leaders.
Right. There's somebody in particular that I'm not going to say their name, but you know who I'm talking about, especially you, Vocab. The thing is that we have had hundreds of people come out, entire families come out. And it didn't come out because the idea is, we're telling people that Black people can't possibly ever be Israelites, because that's not what we're arguing for. The question was, the people that were caught up in it, their emphasis was not on the gospel. It was on this so-called ethnicity claim. That was the priority for them. And the Lord brought them out because they were in a deception. It was a delusion. And he brought them into right standing, that they would know the person of Jesus Christ, why his finished work on the cross is so important for the remission of sins, why that must be the emphasis, the gospel message, death, burial, and resurrection. But knowing the person of Jesus Christ, that he's not just a mere man. He wasn't adopted and then became a God at his baptism. He's not somehow conflated with the person of the Father. None of that. And that's why we hold to the orthodoxy of the faith handed down from the apostles to their disciples. It wasn't something created at Nicaea. That's something that we can talk about with Hebrew Israelites another time. But the emphasis must be on the finished work of the cross. If it is not, then it becomes another gospel and another Christ. And that is why we fight so vehemently against Hebrew Israelism, because the vast majority of proponents are endorsing another gospel, and in many instances, another version of Jesus Christ.
Absolutely.
Amen. Hey guys, I gotta take off. I don't know about y'all, but Cyber City is a whole bunch of stuff to do for tomorrow. So I hope everyone has a beautiful night. I think this is a.
I got like a 10-minute commentary I want to give real quick.
You're gonna explain the ontological argument real quick there.
Wow.
Why you always coming at me, man? Bro, what is that?
See, when we think
That was good. That was good.
Adam in his videos, he's always walking somewhere. He's like, I'm sorry. All right, man. God bless you. You know I got love for you guys, man. It's good. Hey, George, you're already on Friday, man. So happy Friday.
Yeah,
bro.
that's right. It's Friday here.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to seeing
God
you
bless,
guys, Cyber City too. God bless, and a shout out
I'll
to
be on
E.
there.
Yes. God bless y'all. Have a beautiful night.
Good night, y'all.
Peace.
Peace.